Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our English coverage of the Chinese LPL Promotion Series. LSPL teams looking to try and stake their claim on the LPL. I am, of course, Max Atlas Anderson, joined by the wonderful Christopher Papa Smithy Smith. And we're going to start with Gamty taking on Legend Dragon here. And Xiaohu's actually having a nap.
Yeah, a lot of long days for these players, I'm sure, scrimming. We saw players in previous sets also struggling to get through. Maybe not ideal at the start, but get the sleep in when you can.
Damn
this
right.
could be a 5-game series.
This could be a lot of work for these players, of course. And, you know, at least Sing Dream, at least he's awake. So that's fine.
And that's the most important thing. So Legend Dragon, the B team actually for
Yeah.
LGD, LDG, not confusing as all. Might just call them
EDG, LGD, LDG, GDL,
EDG, ADG, LGD, LDG.
Oh, you are so good at these acronyms, Papa Smithy. Thank you for carrying this one. But let's go through the Legend Dragon lineup. In the top lane, it's Love Eat Potato.
Love Eat Potato. That's, I think, right up there with the top names so far we've
so
seen
good.
of the LSPL. Very much meta champions. You could confuse him for Koro with champion picks like that. Loving the Na. And then Sejuani only for Avoidless.
Yeah, Avoidless, unable to avoid the snowy picks here, Papa Smithy.
It's going to be a long night.
It's going to be a long night for you, and I'm going to have a great time. But, ladies and gentlemen, in the mid lane, it is going to be Pasa coming up next. Pasa. And we'll see what he's going to be able to bring here as well. This is largely Hong Kong-based lineup here as well. A couple of Chinese players thrown in there as well, largely playing on the Taiwanese server. So a little bit different here from these guys coming through from Legend Dragon.
Yeah, I mean, Energy Pacemaker HK, previous this season's Energy Pacemaker lineup, had been traditionally the Hong Kong representatives. Now it seems like Legend Dragon trying to stake their claim in the LPL. Pasa very much in the meta. Azir, Vladimir, Urgot, all common picks. We've seen a lot more Urgot in the 2v2 role.
Yep.
I hesitate to call him AD carry because he's basically crushing AD carry's dreams.
Yeah, he's sort of like the anti-AD carry rather than the actual AD carry. But this is the star player for the Legend Dragon lineup. Kabe, you can see, plays a lot of these hyper carries as well as that Graves for the upfront burst. But the Jinx Kog'Maw, that really stands out here because they play around this guy a lot.
Whether it's Juggermore, whether it's Protect the Jinx, Kabe came into the lineup late towards the end of the LSPL and really became very quickly their star player. Previously it was the likes of Avoidless and Paso who've been taking carry roles. But Juggermore or Protect the Kog'Maw, those are the comps we've been told to expect coming into this series.
Yeah, and we'll see how it's going to go up against the bottom lane of Tail and Sync Dream. Of course, Tail and Sync Dream over the LPL season have been a little bit hit or miss, you have to say.
And it's amusing in that Gamty, when they let Xiaohu move on to more of a carry champion, we've seen Lucian middle, Ezreal middle, any of his carry picks, I feel like Gamty shape up really well. Of course, they split so many series in the LPL despite only picking up the 1-2-0 that left them anchored in 11th place. It's when they actually go full Protect the Kog'Maw themselves, the Juggermore around Tail, when Xiaohu moves to the likes of the Lulu mid, that Gamty look weakest. I want to see Xiaohu moving on to those carry champions and hell, the non-meta picks. Two of their victories in recent times, I believe their last two victories of the season were on Aurelia mid and Lucian mid. So those are unique picks only to Gamty in the LPL, but very effective.
Yeah, and Lucian mid, we've sort of seen, of course, having casted a little bit of the Oceanic scene, but of course, Lucian mid very out of the meta, and Aurelia mid made absolutely no sense to me, but seemed to work.
I mean, Aurelia support, Aurelia mid. Aurelia's definitely been taking a walk from the top lane. We're looking at the most picks. Unfortunately, the win rate's not really there for those champions. To me, the one that sticks out is Xiaohu on Ezreal, though. Only a 50% win rate, but we're talking a 15-plus KDA. You and I believe, casted a 12-2-9 loss on Ezreal.
Completely insane.
He does some crazy carry modes. That's why he moves over to the Lucian. Any sort of carry mode champion in the mid is a meta pick for Xiaohu.
Yeah, and Let Me actually, his most successful champion you can see in his top 3 picks, going to be that Aurelia as well. We'll see whether he's going to get on that champion, but more than comfortable on these tanks. And when you're a team like Gamty that didn't pick up a whole lot of victories throughout the LPL, you can't necessarily see exactly how successful they are based on the win percentages.
And Love Eat Potato showing the Caston, Let Me's Caston, also one of his strongest champions.
Yeah.
They love those top lane mages. I feel like Caston's going to be a contested pick. Kabe loving the Kog'Maw, as we mentioned, and plays a bit of everything, but they love to tend towards the hyper carry bottom lane.
Yeah, and you can see Pasa actually spreading the love throughout quite a few different picks there in the mid lane, but that RE 100% win rate definitely standing out. And of course, Southwind playing some very standard supports there in the bottom lane.
But you can see lots of Nunu, lots of Janna and Thresh, lots of supportive champions. This is what they like to default to. Gamty, maybe they'll take away the Lulu with the first pick, but again, please don't go full one threat. Don't go full Juggermore, because that's when Gamty have looked their weakest.
Yeah, well, we'll see exactly what's going to happen. We are going to have champion select very soon, and we'll see whether the Gamty playstyle is going to be able to counteract this Juggermore-esque choice coming through from Legend Dragon, because Legend Dragon, they like to play around that 180 carry, but of course it's Xiaohu that's really the star player here for Gamty, and we'll see whether that tips the balance based on where the pressure is going to be coming from. But we are going to hop straight into Champ Select, and it looks like Gamty have most definitely done their homework, as the Nunu and the Lulu going to hit the bench.
That was going to be my opening comment. Done their research. The Lulu, the Nunu, definitely the two core tenets of a Protect the Kog'Maw comp. Nunu offering so much that an 80 carry looks. We're basically giving a free Phantom Dancer. No critical strike, but the movement speed and attack speed right up there with the Phantom Dancer with that Blood Boil. Vladimir being banned as well. This is one series actually where I don't really feel like I know what the 3 ideal bans are against Gamty, just because they play so well off meta. I don't know how to contain them with 3 bans. Of course, a best of 5 is really interesting for them because they've split so many series. They have so few losses, and then some 0-2s against the top teams in the LPL. This is such a hard one to predict.
It most certainly is, and we'll see exactly how Gamty go in this extended series because, like you mentioned, a little bit erratic with their playstyle, and we'll see whether we see anything come through as far as, I guess, trends during this series. It's going to be very interesting to see, but it looks like Kabe thinking about the Sivir here for the bottom lane, one of his more successful champions, I believe around about an 80% win rate on that one. And a Voidless going to lock away the Thresh here for Southwind, so the bottom lane not really giving too much away here for Legend Dragon, but probably wanting more of an engaged style comp.
I mean, you can see that with the Thresh. The Thresh kind of straddles the line more than Annie, and we've seen so much Sivir Annie, particularly from EDG. A Sivir priority, 5.6, bring in the tanks, bring in lots of gap-closing 5,000 health people, and what better than Sivir's on the hunt to launch them into the backline. So Sivir, despite her laning disadvantage, despite the fact you're opening up the likes of Jinx as a very strong laning solution to the Sivir, Sivir still hits the meta just because, again, not a high skill cap move, that ultimate. Group with your team, press R, hell, they can even come in late and still pick up the buff, and it empowers those Cinderhulk top laners, Cinderhulk junglers to really get in the backline.
Yeah, and actually it's going to be Gamty locking away the Jinx here. Huey picking that one up for Tail. I very much like the pickup, but they could have picked away the Maokai. There wasn't really much threat of that Jinx being taken away. They could have taken that from Love Eat Potato, who's now hovering that.
It is a bit curious to see the Jinx taken in this rotation. You can only assume that they're probably picking their complete bottom lane to give them 1 counter pick. Of course, if you go for solo lanes, you leave potential 2 counter picks to Legend Dragon since they have the 5th pick red side advantage. But when it comes to Maokai, nothing really counters him in lane. Maybe he empowers some champions to farm that you'd prefer didn't, but you can always lane swap and go for a jungle follow around them. So it looks like Maokai be seeded away, and then probably the highest priority jungler in recent weeks, the Gragas as well. Legend Dragon quietly have assembled a really fearsome first 4 picks.
Yeah, and we saw this last night, Snake versus King. Gragas picked in every single game for one of the junglers. Of course, MLXG not quite having as much success, but massively punched his way into the top of the meta picks.
And I personally don't agree with Gragas as an auto-pick jungler. I feel like you have to have a reason to use the Gragas. But against Sejuani, it's actually an excellent pick because Sejuani's going to go for the Glacial Prison. If Gragas doesn't get stunned up, just throw out that explosive cast, disengage, ensure that the Glacial Prison is completely negated, and then Sejuani is just a health-stacking, medium damage frontline threat. You can disengage so well with Gragas. The explosive cast use is definitely the difference between a good Gragas and a great Gragas, and we'll have to see if a Voidless has really practiced this champion.
Yeah, and on the other side, Gamty going to lock away the Trundle and the Orianna here, and Spawn raised an interesting point, running Trundle into a double tank comp, which is coming through here now for Legend Dragon. What's your opinion on that one as far as getting that Subjugate only onto one of these tanks?
I mean, that's the big question mark, I guess. I really like Trundle in general. It doesn't have a lot of lane control, so Maokai in a 1v2 is going to be a lot stronger than the Trundle. In a 1v1, he definitely needs to get the Tiamat to have that counter lane pushing, to have any sort of lane presence. Maokai basically going to be able to push and leave whenever he wants. There's 2 people to ult here. In general, it's going to definitely be Maokai getting the earlier resistances, but we're probably going to see the double Doran Ring into Catalyst, erring towards the health stacking to just ensure that the Subjugate value, at least in the early game, is going to be minimal. In the late game, Trundle makes a tank vulnerable. It makes a target like Maokai who's going to dive in onto the Jinx nice and squishy. Jinx kills him, gets the reset on the Get Excited, and then teamfight looks great. So Trundle and Jinx, I think, have excellent synergy in that regard.
And speaking of synergy as well, they, of course, have a lot of protection for Tail on this Jinx. They've got the Command Protect. They've got the Black Shield there as well. And what I really love about Orianna is she can be an offensive choice there in the mid lane at the same time. But let's have a look at the top lane here. Love Eat Potato against Let Me. Let Me love Eat Potato. That is beautiful. But it is going to be Trundle versus Maokai, of course. 1v1 going to go Trundle's way, but we'll see whether they lane swap. And Huey up against a Voidless now actually took away the Sejuani from a Voidless. Definitely his most played champion in recent games.
I just feel like the Gragas is going to be the big question mark. It's either going to be a big win condition or hold back this Legend Dragon lineup just because they have Gragas and Karthus.
Yeah.
One wants to disrupt a fight, one wants to dive straight into it. So if the disengage can come from the ultimate at the start of a fight and then it ends up with Karthus on the back line, it's an excellent team fight for Legend Dragon, but it's one of those points of failure. It's when you see Gragas Kennen, for example, and you're like, I don't know how this is going to work. Gragas Kennen Janna for the ultimate, how is this going to work? If it works ideally for Legend Dragon, it could be massive, but there is that point of failure just from the champion picks.
Yeah, and a Voidless going to have to be very careful about when he uses that ultimate. But ladies and gentlemen, let's get onto the Rift. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen, Gamty taking on Legend Dragon for our first game of this best of 5 in the promotion tournament here for the LPL. And Legend Dragon, our LSPL team hailing majoritively from Hong Kong, are going to be giving it their best shot against Gamty, who have definitely looked up and down throughout the LPL season.
And I'm really interested to see how Gamty play against this Karthus. I'm not actually sure if Gamty have had to face a Karthus in the regular LPL split so far. I mean, we saw Starhorn Royal Club kind of finding their identity about how to fight a Karthus during a series, which is a bit awkward. You would hope that Scrims would have been the environment for that. But certainly, last week of LPL, Starhorn Royal Club, no idea how to fight on a Karthus. Happy to opt in to fight on its Graves. Yesterday, much better with the disengage. Gragas gives them a lot of flexible choice in this case. It's going to be Sejuani into the Wombo combo, hopefully. But the ball carriers for Gamty, they're not as reliable as the likes of Zac, as the likes of Maokai. So there's a lot of question marks. How will the Gragas go? How will the Shockwave be utilized? And I'm just really excited to find out which of these teams really shows up, because they both have clear win conditions and kind of flexible engage and disengage options.
Yeah, and it's all about execution here as well. And we'll just see, because, of course, the wild card coming through, which is interesting to me, is Gamty here. Because, of course, they just have a very confusing playstyle sometimes, and Sync Dream often does interesting things on his support pick, and we'll see exactly how this one's going to work out. But Xiaohu on more of a farming champion here against this Karthus. Do you think he'll still be able to have sort of that massive carry impact that he often does in these games, or is he a little bit too reliant on that 2-item spike?
It's a very interesting question that you pose. Karthus versus Orianna is a farm matchup. Who does that really favor in the late game? It's kind of open for debate. With the comps as they're picked, it's all about flanks looking from Gamty, from getting into the backline and trying to force damage and not opting into fights on Karthus's Defile. Orianna, the big flexible thing about her, of course, is that she has that defensive scaling when she builds up the AP, so it does empower someone like Jinx to be healthy, to get that first kill, to get excited, and to just launch around the fight. And Jinx getting excited is important in many ways to any team comp, but against a Karthus especially, if that get excited actually opens up distance away from the Karthus Defile or the lay waste and allows her to reposition successfully, and she's only taking, for example, the Requiem for damage, the defensive scaling and then the offensive options of Orianna might actually be the key to this Gamty win.
Yeah, really is a beautiful choice there, and I like the Orianna. We'll just see whether in the hands of Xiaohu it's going to be working out. Hasn't been playing it as much recently, but she's really rocketed back into the meta here, and it seems that always when we get to playoff stage of anything, Orianna becomes a top-tier pick.
Orianna is definitely the champion for all metas, is I believe the way to summate her competitive career. She's always been the same. In this case, of course, on 5.6, she did receive that indirect nerf, kind of a massive indirect nerf, as Athene's went from a decent item to a massively strong item on any champion that has low cooldown, control spells, zigs. Orianna loving the Athenes now, it being more and more core in a Nivea build, and Cassinan also rocking up. The 30% mana restore is crazy. And on a champion like Orianna, who has a speed up and shielding, she's getting an assist for basically 100% of kills. That's keeping you topped up to the high mana levels. You can opt into the that's actually a lot of damage on Potato.
Yeah, nice binding into the chompers there as well. Lovey Potato taking a lot of damage, but look at Tail. He's down to 100 health.
I mean, it's actually Spawn who talks about the fact that Maokai's auto attack, and it's his base values on his spells,
highest
is very
base
high.
damage in the game.
Base damage on autos, base damage on spells is very, very high, and the trade damage and the minion tanking, very even trade in a 2v1.
Yeah, really nicely done. Huey and Let Me, you're going to have to watch these minions die. Definitely going to be helping Let Me out there, of course, able to use that King's Tribute passive. But this is 3 members of LD looking to really chunk down this turret, but haven't been able to get too much done. Of course, the low range of Civ are a bit of a problem there.
Interesting to see them opt into the 3-man fast push. We didn't even talk about the fact that the lane swap was initiated by Legend Dragon.
Yeah. Understandable,
given that Sivir versus Jinx not an ideal lane matchup, and Maokai much better in a 1v2. I mean, this is only awkward that if Trundle was able to re-swap into a 1v1 with Tiamat, which is a possibility, but just given the lane matchup, probably not going to get too close to that 2,000 gold anytime soon.
No, not happening just yet, but we'll see how it goes and how it develops, because of course we've seen sort of a little bit more of this fast pushing as opposed to freezing going on just recently here in the LPL and across other regions, and we'll just see how it works out this game, because wanting to wait until the late game, everyone.
The fast push, just looking at the minimap, was probably more to reset the lane back. And so I think the lane freeze is back on. Gragas is coming in with a bit of AoE wave clear. One of the unique facts about the jungle Gragas, you max that Q, it does give you ranged wave clear. You can happily leave it charging up to that double damage or increased damage phase if you just come into the lane in a 3v1 situation. So they're just resetting the top lane again. You don't want Trundle to get that Tiamat, because suddenly he actually has a favorable lane matchup, or at least a very even one with your Maokai.
Yeah, and I mean, it just needs that extra wave clear like you mentioned. Tiamat pretty good for that.
And then of course the ultimate, you're building attack damage. You might think, okay, but then you can't trade with the tanky Maokai. Throw in the subjugate, and finally trades will definitely go on your way with the Q, the Chomp, and the auto attack reset, or effective auto attack reset one from the Tiamat. It's just really strong instant trades with the Tiamat Trundle.
Yeah, Let Me actually going to have to use that Frozen Domain, taking a lot of damage here after that Death Sentence came through from Southwind. Kabe continuing to put the pressure down. Behind just a little bit from Tail as far as the lane swap is concerned, but nothing to write home about, and this Sivir able to push out this wave as she definitely enjoys doing.
Seeing Gragas enter the bottom lane. I mean, just coming back to Orianna Athenes in particular, the other small factor that I overlooked, Chalice is cheaper. Chalice so good against lots of the assassins or even Karthus that can do a lot of early trade damage. Always going to take guaranteed damage every time he channels the Requiem. So Chalice being cheaper, just another indirect buff to Athenes, and suddenly, straight back into the meta is Orianna.
Yep, well, she does like being in the meta, has been in there for quite some time. Avoidless doing a bit of a cheeky early dragon here as well. Passer going to push out this wave and give him a hand by throwing some Skittles down, and it looks like this is going to go completely unbeknownst to Gamty. Nice little pink ward there to make sure that Avoidless is going to be doing this without any indication from the enemy team. Gamty just going to let that one go. They, of course, do see the buff appear on the rest of the members of Legend Dragon. They will have a rough timer of that 13-minute mark where the dragon is going to be respawning, but nice little pickup there from Avoidless.
I mean, Gragas, when he had his Drunken Rage damage cap to minions increased to 300, so relevant onto the dragon especially. Gives you a lot more dragon pressure on a champion who is already a good ganker. Maokai takes a lot of harass damage in bottom lane. We're on to Trundle, he's level 6.
Yeah, Boomerang Blade coming through here as well. The Ricochet comes down. There's the Requiem, and First Blood is going to go to Passer there in the mid lane. Beautifully orchestrated, and Lemmy's got to stop getting hit by those hooks.
And the massive thing also there, Atlas, Sivir and Thresh didn't even need to use any of their summoners because they had the guaranteed damage coming through from Karthus. Trundle just reactively flashes because that's just what you do, or tries to move away, didn't actually have flash available. And his death gets the Karthus going. Karthus, he's got the Tia, he's got the Blasting Wand. Will we see the return of the Assassin build, going towards Assassin? Not Assassination Karthus, but of course the Assassin build, which is Tia into the Rylai's.
Yeah, well, we'll see whether it does come down. Of course, that could just be straight into an Archangel. That's the confusing thing about this build. It does have a whole lot of different pathways, but I think that it probably will be that that Rylai's Crystal Scepter. It's so fantastic on Karthus.
I mean, Karthus, of course, loves the extra health that comes through the Rod of Ages, so that's why a lot of people went for that Rod of Ages. But getting Rylai's gives you 400 health, which is starting to equalize the amount of health you pick up through the Rod of Ages, and it just gives you such a strong pick tool and delay waste. I mean, the slow duration, the 35% slow duration, if you get the single target slow, actually lasts longer than the cooldown on Lay Waste. So, hey, if you've got your eye in on Karthus, and we've certainly seen some excellent Karthus plays so far in the LPL, you basically got a pick tool to go with the massive slow coming through from the wall every 15, 16 seconds. Adding another another angle to Karthus's play just makes him a more desirable champion. That's why we see so much Karthus in the meta.
Yeah, so much more Karthus, most definitely. And sort of as soon as these control mages come back through, Karthus, another champion that sort of pokes his head back in, because you can just farm up against him and become that dominating late game force. And we've spoken about this. So safe to pick him up as well, because that Death Defy is so much guaranteed damage.
And it's multiple factors, Atlas. It's the fact that the junglers have gone from high-pressure early-game junglers like Lee Sin to Cinderhulk junglers who are just happy to farm up and get towards level 6, only poke their heads in lane when there's a guaranteed kill or strong communication coming through. It's the fact that Assassins decided to move out of the meta, and as you mentioned, the control mages are there. That's the lovely thing about League of Legends and the competitive meta, is that the moment that something comes through a buff, through an indirect buff, it's the counters. It's like when Zatai started playing Shen and Lupa was like, wait, I play Singed. I can just happily play that. Of course, that game didn't go so well, so it's not the best example. But Singed, comes back into the meta just because one champion becomes popular. And that's just the peaks and troughs of the League of Legends metagame. And seeing Karthus back after maybe 18 months out of the sun, it's nice to see.
Yeah, and it's nice to see Trundle making his way back in as well. Of course, as soon as you bring back those tanks, Trundle is definitely going to be a priority pick, and it's fantastic to see him back in the meta. But we'll see how he goes this game. Of course, already dying once there, and I wanted to talk to you about this. Are you able to set up a pillar in front of yourself as that death sentence comes through to avoid being pulled too far out?
I guess you could. It's probably an awkward interaction because, of course, the Thresh can still follow through. In that particular situation, I still think it would have been his demise. But, I mean, you can do cute things with the Trundle pillar. It can be super powerful. I mean, if it was, say, for example, I mean, the interesting thing about Trundle is that, let's say you're sieging as a Trundle, you throw out that pillar, suddenly it becomes that much easier to hit skill shots because people might be forced between, say, a turret and the pillar. People will be slowed, and it is a sheer slow, I believe, up to 40% at highest level.
Yeah.
It's a big slow. Anyone with skill shots loves having a Trundle on their team because it opens up actually easier skill shot use. So the Shockwave, it's a skill shot to some degree. It's definitely very skill reliant. The Dark Binding as well. There's a lot of potential for some sick engages if Gamti can weather the storm. Remember, they are not significantly behind, but already 1,000 gold at 8 minutes.
Yeah, well, that has to come through a little bit based on that first blood going to Pasta there in the mid lane. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a slight pause. That's why we're hanging out, having a look at some of these players. We're going to have this game back to you as soon as possible, but having that early lead, definitely looking good here so far for Legend Dragon, but Gamti, they've got a decent scaling comp as well. We've spoken about this fact, but one thing that people often fall into the trap of, you think of Sivir as, she's a lot of burst damage with that. The Boomerang Blade also has that ricochet as well for a lot of AoE work. Short range, think maybe a mid-game carry, but that On the Hunt, so good in the late game for getting those engages that you're looking for. Is Jinx still the hyper carry that's much better here in this situation?
So, I mean, talking about Sivir in general, like, people do fall in the trap of thinking that she falls off late game, and she does in one way but not in another. Her damage, specifically her damage to tanks, she builds standard carries, so Infinity Edge, Phantom Dancer, Last Whisper, maybe a Static Shiv, of course, depending on preference. So she does build and can auto-attack cancel, like you say, so she can actually kill tanks. The kind of wrench in that plan is that she's 500 range, she doesn't have a reposition, so she has to respect things that other carries don't need to. For example, she has to respect the Shockwave more than most carries, just because whenever she's getting an auto-attack range, whenever she's looking to throw out the Boomerang Blade, she might be in range of the command attack. She might have to respect the Soul Shackles more than most AD carries, because again, she's diving and she's cancelling her auto. She's in the 500 range or less in a team fight if she's want to kill a tank. I mean, suddenly you're in Soul Shackles range, which I believe is around 425 range. So in the late game, it's hard to do that damage as Sivir because you have to respect tanks. You have to respect CC more than other carries. But if your team's ahead, if, for example, Karthus is such a threat that he's using multiple resources from the enemy team to take him down, Sivir can run through a fight. The difference is Jinx, though, has that 700 range, has the get excited to always have repositioning. Yeah. It's always about the first kill for Jinx. You'll see crazy flashes from the likes of Huey and Let Me just to get extra damage to ensure that last rocket kills the enemy to get that first kill, because they know that after that, Jinx, running so fast with so much range, happy to build Berserker's Greaves, can auto-attack and can orb walk so aggressively with the extra movement speed and pick up more kills. So Jinx, far more reliable in the late game. Their AoE, though, very similar, of course, between, say, the Ricochet and the AoE crit potential of the Rockets. But it's just going to be 9 times out of 10, Tail is going to do more damage in the late game than Sivir, unless Legend Dragon were already winning by a significant margin.
Yeah, well, we'll see whether they get themselves to that point. Of course, it's a great sort of insurance policy letting you at least follow through with a victorious early game. And so far, with that first blood going down to Karthus, things looking pretty good in that department here for Legend Dragon.
I mean, Karthus is the late game hyper carry for Legend Dragon. Orianna, definitely up there, but more utility focused. Yep. Still going to be insane burst. We always look out for that shockwave in the late game when we're talking about 3-item AP Orianna.
Godvi just recently showing us some incredible Orianna, and not to mention Rookie as well. Orianna really having a massive resurgence.
And my interest is actually, do we see the return of Luden's Echo second Orianna? I mean, I'm a personal fan of the Death Cap just because she has so much defensive scaling that stacking that AP gives those defensive properties. But Luden's Echo, with all the spells, with the 3-second cooldown on that command attack, you get a lot of those procs, and it makes what is already good wave clear just instant.
Yeah, and insane. And as well as the fact that you have the dissonance, you can speed yourself up and even lower the cooldown on the Luden's Echo by that much as well. But Love Eat Potato, he's going to shove up that lane as, of course, Tail went back, picked up the boots, picked up a BF sword there as well. Is going to be answered here by Kabe, who actually manages to get an Avarice Blade at the same time. Probably looking for that static shiv, unless we're going to see a cheeky Ghost Blade built up here from Sivir, which is not unheard of, but probably not going to be happening. And Kabe on his way to definitely a bit of an investment build.
Yeah, the investment banker Sivir is coming through in this particular situation. Means that she probably wants to stay out of the 2v2 for longer, though, Atlas, just because, again, you opt into an item that doesn't give you much lane presence. It's more for banking gold. You're already naturally going to lose that Jinx versus Sivir matchup just because Sivir doesn't trade well with Jinx, who has that extra range, who often can benefit from like those auto attacks in rocket form, splashing damage onto the creep wave, so pushing the creeps and harassing. The ultimate value bet against the investment banker just means that the sums don't work out for Sivir, and it means the lane swap's probably going to be longer, which should start to see Dragon control on Dragon respawn to Gamti.
Well, they are having a look around there. Of course, it was going to be 13 minutes that one was going to come up. Another 3 minutes and about 10 seconds there for the Dragon if Gamti want to go for that one. Wall of Pain going to spot Huey out, who just decides to see how long it is by walking through it. And let me, he's got body slammed. There's in fact the death sentence as well. Subjugate trying to keep him alive, lands on another barrel at the same time, and a Voidless picks up the kill. And Southwind's Thresh has been really impressive.
And Letme's just been getting caught everywhere. He exited lane because lane has been so painful for him. His turret already going down. Flash is available, just couldn't get to one of these fat walls to actually get a safe flash to this turret. So 2 deaths already. The Tiamat's going to be super, super late. And there might actually be a situation where Maokai hits a better Ida tying and can still trade with the Tiamat Trundle.
Yeah, well, it's certainly looking like that so far. Teleport actually going to be used here as Glacial Prison not going to really find anything. A Voidless and Southwind getting caught up. Ooh, Descent's not going to find its mark. There's Letme hanging out underneath this turret with Huey, of course, helping him out, but he's going to take a bit of damage from this.
And neither of them have any threat to force multiple members away from the turrets. Only if Orianna starts rotating that they have to respect it. Look at this. They're like, okay, well, you don't have Glacial Prison. You don't even have a Tiamat. You're not going to do any trade damage. It's a free second turret, an inner turret for Legend Dragon at 11 minutes.
Yeah, and that's the whole top lane done with here by Legend Dragon. They're going to be able to let that one go, probably move their Sivir around and pick up some more turrets on this map. We'll see what he decides to pick up. Of course, the Berserker's Grief, something you talk about a lot as being that fantastic item if you are going to rotate around the map and pick up these objectives, but it's not going to be. It's going to be the pickaxe and boots.
I think if you have the Berserker's Greaves, it makes you really want to be in the 2v2. It's in the 2v2 situation, having the Berserker Greaves against Sivir gets you maybe 3 autos for every 1 auto Sivir does, because the moment she moves back, the moment she stops trading in a burst trade, those extended trades just go naturally in the advantage of Jinx, and just having that extra flat movement speed to get that last rocket, sneak it in, just makes those trades even better. But at this point, kind of happy whatever happens.
Yeah, well, Tiamat almost completed here by Letme. Has every component possible for that one, trying to keep his wave a little bit closer to his inhibitor turret now, just so that he can get some farm. 2,000 gold now, the lead for Legend Dragon. As Sync Dream is going to Black Shield himself up, not hit by that death sentence regardless. And Xiaohu going to continue just farming out this wave. Not behind by much at all after Passer picked up that first blood, but is down a back timing. And of course, it is the Ryleigh's Crystal Scepter that's going to be picked up. And Kabe, a whole lot of free time here with this bottom lane outer turret. And Tail, he can't do anything. There's a massive insurgence of people, as in fact there's Sync Dream coming through the Chomper's land as well. Super Mega Death Rocket, and that's going to be picked up by Sync Dream. Sync Dream actually just ulted for that one, no worries. And that was just a little bit of poor positioning here by Avoidless.
So Avoidless is going to be back just in time for the Dragon, but probably has to walk there. So, of course, if they start the Dragon instantly, won't be grouped to this team Legend Dragon. The one thing that impresses me, though, Atlas, is they took 2 out of turrets, and now they have ward supremacy about the Dragon. The rotation to bottom to also take that out of turret. Okay, Avoidless dying, not ideal. But the rotational play by Legend Dragon is actually far superior to that of the LPL team, Gumty.
Yeah, it's really looking good so far. And, of course, the vision game as well. You can see a whole lot of red wards here on this bottom side of the map. That's where Legend Dragon want to be focusing. They want to be around that Dragon. Of course, a little bit further away is the bottom side one, but Gamty now managing to get their vision down themselves. And Letme's pushed up this top wave completely. Doesn't have teleport, and Love Eat Potatoes is up. So it's going to have to mean that Letme's going to maneuver himself down to this bottom side of the map if they want to contest.
But with these aggressive wards, Karthus can definitely put out that wall of pain and stop anyone trying to come from the Raptor camp towards Dragon to have to respect the lay waste, because the first one's normally going to lead to the second, the third. It's not just the pick potential, it's the fact that isolated lay waste damage is really high. The base damage is crazy, and getting 35% slow just makes that second and third one more reliable. So Coves are risky for both teams. The Trundle Pillar of Ice wrecks a team in a Cove just like the Rumble Equalizer does in a lot of situations. And in this case, respecting the Karthus makes things difficult for Gumty, but no one actually going towards this Dragon. I feel like Legend Dragon are in a significant power spike, but Infinity Edge, they were buying time for Carbe to pick that up. And despite the fact that Jinx had a very free lane, she's not being able to match these item timings.
Yeah, and it's a lot to do with Carbe managing to be able to pick up that Avarice Blade off the back of the assist picked up there from the kill on Letme.
So start off the Dragon. Gumty trying to rotate, but they definitely don't have the same vision quality. They do have the Glacial Prison, and that's always something to respect.
Yeah, Dark Binding actually going to help take down Southwind here as the Super Mega Death Rocket comes through as well. Southwind very, very low. They're going to lose a man in this fight, of course, unless... Oh, that's actually the Glacial Prison. Look at the Shockwave. Immediately deletes Carbe, and he's the main carry in this one. Double kill already for Xiaohu as Tail gets excited. Flashing forward, Southwind takes so much damage. Tarbe is going to get deterred by that Requiem coming through. So many flashing health bars, but a beautiful engage by Gumty.
And look, if we're going to credit Legend Dragon for good rotations, that was an incredibly poor one from Maokai in particular. The teleporter started channeling after the Shockwave had already wrecked the front line. Pasa in particular on this Karthus. 2 members die instantly, both carries from Legend Dragon, and that could have all been avoidable if he just saw Love Eat Potato rotate earlier. The communication needed to be clearer if they were going to opt into that Dragon fight, but again, they didn't respect the Dark Binding. That's what led to Southwind being chunked out, and then they didn't respect the potential of the big initiate from Xiaohu, so credit to him. Massive Shockwave.
Yeah, massive Shockwave, and Huey as well with a beautiful Glacial Prison. Couldn't have been easier for Xiaohu just to put that one in. Let's have a look at the replay.
So look at this, the Glacial Prison into the double Shockwave. Everyone dies in the front lane. Yuri can just go past. He's already relatively tanky. You see the value of the Get Excited as it gets this positioning so aggressively. Won't pick up the kill on Thresh, but still, that was a Gumty team that was behind, and now they jump right into the competition.
Yeah, and that's going to be a Ravenous Hydra completed by Letme. He wants to start up his split pushing now. And, of course, Infinity Edge Berserker's Greaves completed by Tail. He's really amping up in this fight, and needlessly large rod comes through for Xiaohu, and we've spoken about this 2-item spike for Orianna. As soon as that Rabadon's Death Cap, or I guess Luden's Echo, comes through, it's going to be a whole lot of extra damage for this mid laner.
Absolutely. Then you have to respect the burst as well as the CC on the Shockwave, and suddenly this Jinx getting 1 kill can completely wreck your team with an extra 200-300 effective health multiple times in a fight. My big question to you is actually something I haven't noticed, been off screen a large amount this time. Despite the really horrible early learning phase of Letme, he's actually 19 CS up and now has an item advantage over Maokai, who's been largely untroubled this game.
Yeah, this is crazy. Of course, Love Eat Potato was zoned a little bit by Tail and Sync Dream there on the bottom side of the map, but not falling down meant that they didn't get any extra advantages from it. Oh, Avoidless now in a bit of trouble here as Soul Shackles comes through. There's the ult. The Shockwave comes down as well. They just threw all of their buttons in order to pick up the Fat Man, but does net them another kill.
And Gumty are playing around their vision much better than Legend Dragon. Legend Dragon had all that aggressive vision around The Dragon then didn't manage to actually pick it up and ended up falling in that situation. In this situation, though, the 3 aggressive wards in the red side jungle of Legend Dragon gets them a pick, gets them a lot of damage onto this outer turret in mid, as Kabe trying to duel with Let Me.
Yeah, but Let Me with a massive creep wave. You saw the King's Tribute doing a lot of work. Lovey Potato's found Tail here. The chompers are available. Lovey Potato realizes he doesn't quite have the cooldowns to take him down as a sapling and a slow Tail there. And a little bit of a face-off, but they decide to part ways.
I mean, the burst trades from Maokai with those base values and tankiness are very good against the Jinx. It's just, as you noticed, the moment he decides that he doesn't have kill pressure, Jinx gets 5 or 6 autos and basically equalizes the trade.
Yeah, and of course, when you've got half the farm as well, it's not really going to work out. Of course, not too bad here for Lovey Potato, who was in that lane swap situation. Denied quite a lot at the beginning of this game, so don't think too badly of him.
Won't do as a Voidless. Waiting to see what impact the Explosive Cast can have in a fight. I liked it as a disengage tool when they were taking that second outer turret in the bottom lane. But subsequent to that, haven't seen the massive use of the Explosive Cask. And honestly, the early damage from Gragas, his neutral control, but specifically his Explosive Cask is why he's back in the meta. So many CC tanks like Sejuani, so in the resurgence of control mids like Orianna, the perfect disengage is what you're looking for from your Gragas pick, the Gragas priority that we've seen. And we haven't necessarily seen that so far. So far, 2 out of 2 on Shockwaves.
Yeah, well, Xiaohu's had a fantastic game so far. Of course, has been hanging around in that mid lane, picking up a whole lot of farm just recently. Looking now to be moving over towards the blue buff, which I assume is going to be respawning. Yes, is going to respawn right now. A minute until the Baron's up, but that's not going to be an objective that they want to look at. And Legend Dragon, they do have fantastic defensive warding around their own jungle, but is it a little bit unnecessary to have so many wards spread out across this map?
And that's the point I was trying to make, Alice. They're playing around their wards suboptimally. They're putting down too many wards defensively, and when they had offensive wards, they weren't using that to actually force an objective. And you actually just come to the situation where if you overward and you don't actually use it to your advantage, this is something we might have leveled at Vici Gaming in the early weeks of the LPL, where Dandy and Mada, Samsung White style, putting millions of wards down, and Hentong and Carry just thinking, okay, but what do we do with this? There wasn't the communication there to actually open up the wards necessarily. In this game, Legend Dragon have a lot of vision, but aren't playing around it a lot. And the reality is vision costs money. There's double sidestone. There's green wards being completed by multiple members. The gold lead at the moment is 1,700 gold advantage to Gamti, but you throw in the extra warding, we're talking more like 2,500.
Yeah, that being said, Kabe manages to pick up some side lane farm here as well, utilizing some of the vision that Legend Dragon do have down in order to keep himself safe there. And he's had a lot of side lane farm, but only ahead by about 5 CS at this stage to Tail, who's just answering the push.
I mean, the item timings are definitely working out. It's about a 400 gold lead, which is decent for the Sivir. Sivir wants to get as much power in as possible before she really has to respect this Shockwave, though. With the Death Cap completed, Sorcerer's Shoes...
This is huge.
Athene's Unholy Grail Death Cap. Suddenly, Kabe's positioning is so difficult because you want to hold on to that spell shield for the Shockwave, but then how do you respect the Glacial Prison? How do you respect the Soul Shackles or the Dark Binding? Suddenly, life for Sivir in a team fight looks much less clear-cut.
Yeah, it's not looking as great, and this is just in time for Dragon as well. 20 seconds on that one. Tail even went back just to pick up that Cloak of Agility to make sure that he had as much power as possible for this next Dragon fight. Ganti definitely preparing for something, and I very much like it when you know that you want to be fighting soon, spending as much of that gold that you have. Huey even has that Aegis of the Legion as well, and that is very important. Of course, they're only a 1 AD comp on the side of Legend Dragon, whereas a lot of AoE magic damage to deal with, and that Aegis is going to be really doing some work.
And all of the pickups from Gamti are about team fighting. You've got Aegis for the team fight against Karthus and Maokai. You've got the more selfish Phantom Dancer build path for the Jinx rather than Static Shiv, which is great for wave clear. They're tuned for fighting. They've got the defensive and offensive wards for it, so it's smart that Legend Dragon don't opt into the fight, but they won't be able to answer with this mid-tower.
Yeah, and look at this aggressive positioning as well, as Legend Dragon going to be deterred from taking that outer turret in trade for the Dragon when Tail just picks it up on his own.
You have to respect the Sejuani. That's just the reality of the strength of the Glacial Prison. And even though Jinx, if they had thrown out the Glacial Prison, wouldn't have been able to register any damage. It's just the threat, Atlas. It's just the good warding and the good positioning from Huey in particular. He's had a bit of an up and down split. Started off really strong, pentakill on debut.
Yeah.
Struggled since then, but looking good on the Sejuani.
Really is. Got Death Sentence there just a little bit, but he's so incredibly tanky. Here his passer just gets destroyed. Xiaohu takes him out with that Shockwave Super Mega Death Rocket just sails over the top, but he was already dead. And Death Defy not going to do anything in this fight. 30 seconds, and Gamti do not have to respect all that AoE.
So the Pixie C coming through from the likes of Sejuani, from the likes of the Dark Binding from the Morgana, means that you kind of have to have both Sivir and Karthus grouped to wave clear. If you have just one, there's so many different CCs to respect that you can't go aggressively enough to even throw out the lay waste of all abilities. So they're punished with an inner turret as well. Letme's getting free time at the top. He has a Ravenous Hydra. He has a lot of physical damage and an auto attack cancel, and bye-bye inner turret.
Yeah, really beautifully done. Pillar of Ice just to zone away Lovey Potato as well, and inner turret going to fall down in the bottom lane.
These rotations are crazy.
Oh, beautifully done. This is something that we haven't really seen, but that's a beautiful three-man play coming through. Chompers go down to try and stop this one from coming down. Huey out of this fight. His tail, he's going to get Repco him to death, and Pasa picking up that kill. Lovey Potato now takes a whole lot. Nice Dark Binding going to come down as Letme does have Command Protect. A lot of extra tanky statistics, but he gets slowed. Gamti, he forces the flash, but man, this dissonance is tearing apart Kabe.
The command attack distance doing 60% of Sivir's life bodes very poorly for the late game. It's only going to get worse after that 2-item spike. You can see that Sivir, overextending for damage, is going to get punished reliably. Gamti lose the minimum. A 1-for-1 trade, despite the fact that they got so many turrets. The rotations were so on point from Gamti. Did not see a lot of this Gamti in the LPL, but the step up from LSPL and LPL as somehow Xiaohu picks up a pick on Thresh completely off our screen.
That was cheeky.
But it's what we've learned this weekend, Atlas. It seems like the step up from LSPL to LPL is quite sheer, as we've had no LSPL teams qualify for the next round. And Gamti, just their game plan so on point against a Legend Dragon team that had win conditions, seemed to know what to do to get them, but just didn't know how to capitalize on the vision they set up early.
But a lot of these LPL teams that we're seeing coming through here are playing far better than we even saw throughout the LPL as well. And I don't want to speak down here to the LSPL teams just because it does seem like a step up's been had from a lot of these LPL teams heading through here.
But you can never really know, right, Atlas? Like, are they playing better because the opposition is lower? Are they playing better because they've done great scouting, because they have more resources?
I like to think that it's because they're just playing better.
There's just so many. Like, playing better is such like a surface level term. You play better from practice. You play better from research. You play better from the level of your opposition. Confidence in general. I mean, confidence is a good point to bring up because LSPL teams playing on this big stage in front of a live audience. Actually, not that much of a live audience this week. I believe there is no audience for the LSPL team, but still, they're out of their confidence. They're out of their comfort zone in many ways.
Yeah.
And this is a stage that Gamti have played 44 games on already during the LPL season. Confidence could be a very relevant factor. This is the biggest best of 5 for any of these members on the LSPL teams.
Yeah, and well, it's pretty huge here for Gamti as well, but you're exactly right. Probably one of the first ones that they've played, especially at this level for Legend Dragon, but they have definitely this game in order to sort of get the nerves out, get the jitters out, and they've had a great debut so far as, you know, picking up that first blood. They had some decent rotations early on. Kabe manages to pick up a whole heap of farm. Still, 25, 30 CS in the lead here on this Sivir. We'll see whether it does turn out better, but that's a full Luden's Echo picked up from Xiaohu, and he was backing just under that wall, and that's how he managed to pick up that kill on Southwind. Just really cute decision-making coming through as far as where to back out just in case someone comes around the corner and you can pick up a pick.
Xiaohu is just a really clever player.
He's a good player.
He knows how to put out damage. He has a big champion pool. He can be a solo carry for his team. Some to mixed success, but that's not so much about Xiaohu. He'll get the damage, and he's always putting out damage. His Ezreal was very reminiscent of Deft's, and that's as big a compliment as you can give to a mid laner who doesn't get to play as much Ezreal as most people, but it did a massive amount of work on that blue Ezreal. As you said, Legend Dragon had an excellent first 8 to 10 minutes. They played around the map well. They rotated well. They got Letme far behind. It just kind of all came unstuck in the next 15 minutes. And it's looking now like a comfortable Gamti game that it wasn't earlier.
Yeah, and Letme definitely not behind now as he's just going to chomp through that tower. Look at this damage coming down as well as the pillar slows down Lovey Potato, tries to utilize the sapling and the Righteous Glory to get out. But that's going to be a pick over the other side of the map on a Voidless here as well. Xiaohu just shockwaving him to death, and Legend Dragon just losing objectives across the board. And Letme doesn't even care about this tower damage. Look at this inhibitor turret falling down.
This Letme has no cares in the world, and he has so much turret damage building the Ravenous Hydra. Cooldown. You don't expect it, but as you mentioned, the cooldown reduction and the Ravenous Hydra canceling that auto for the chomp. DPS's turrets instantly, so some teleports come through. They're here to contest, but look at this.
Yeah, Syncdream actually flashing forward onto this one. Pasa wants to die in the optimal position, but Syncdream, he's going to survive until the Requiem comes through, of course.
Protect.
Tail, very, very low. The double kill instantly on the bottom lane. Is Gamti going to lose their, two initiating damage dealers here? Of course, Tail not so much initiating, but the flash forward from Syncdream, very Syncdream-esque, and Legend Dragon going to stop the Baron.
Xiaohu was 1 second of cooldown away from the next command protect, which would have saved Jinx's life. So that stops any sort of Baron threat. It's a very good contest. Pasa, he actually died in a great spot. He got so much damage in Lay Waste and Defiles as the Dragon's going to be contested.
Yeah, the Shockwave going to try and come through here as well. Xiaohu, he's looking for it. Not quite in the right position. Southwind, they're going to be the only one that tanks that one up. Tabe trying to take down Letme, of course. Letme not as tanky as he wants to be here. As the flash twisted advance going to net the kill as the boomerang comes through. Just the tip. Picking that one up. Explosive cast onto Xiaohu. Doesn't quite land the barrel though at the end as the dissonance comes through. Misses the flash. Command Protect is there, but you have to think that Avoidless, they would have picked... Oh my goodness. He knows the range of that boomerang quite nicely, does Kabe.
So Xiaohu's ego, I think, took a couple too many tips upwards with my praise for him, missing the Shockwave onto just the Thresh and not covering himself in glory with the poor flash in that situation. Legend Dragon contested the Baron wonderfully, now won a team fight. They're looking for a Baron of their own.
Yeah, they got 12 seconds in order to take this one down. Still
Arthas
some wards
so
to
much
teleport
damage.
in. He certainly does. These Lay Wastes are ripping through it. Oh my goodness, actually, Tail picks up a kill there as the zap comes down, but it is going to be the Baron taken. Super Mega Death Rocket just going to deter them from backing in the pit, but Empowered Recall going to get Legend Dragon back to base, and they are well and truly back in this game now with the Baron.
Very smart play from Southwind. Him dying, you might think, okay, why are you giving an extra kill to the AD carry? But he dived in, he CC'd him up, he put down the box, and he traded his life for the Baron. Excellent trade. You cannot opt into Tail putting out AoE crits with the rocket form in the Baron pit. Anything can happen in a situation like that. So going for that reliable one for Baron trade, good support play by Southwind.
Yeah, really nicely done. Gamti pick up the Consolation Dragon here off the back of it. More movement speed there for the third one to be picked up. There's blue buff going to be taken here from Pasa, and definitely showing some form here on this Karthus towards that last team fight. Was picked out just a little bit in the last few, but we saw when he can get into the right position, things going right here as Luden's Echo doing some work. Lovely Potato going aggressive here. Takes some damage from the Command Protect. Look at the auto attacks coming through from this Sivir as Xiaohu finally able to take down the Siege minion that's doing a whole heap of work. Kabe, though, look at him clear these minion waves. And these melee minions with the Baron buff,
even Luden's Echo Orianna can't clear these waves.
That is huge.
I'm a really, really big fan of Sivir Gragas. I didn't actually talk about it earlier in the game, but Sivir's turret damage, we talk about the fact that she can do the auto attack reset to tanks, still very relevant when you're taking structures. And the unique thing about Gragas is that you plop under a turret, anyone who's defending, the wave clear is going to be standing next to it, ult them away, and then suddenly someone with really high turret damage like a Sivir becomes a great turret sieger just because there's no one there to punish you. Even at 500 range, Explosive Cast displaces you so far that you get in that extra 3-4 auto attacks, maybe an extra ricochet, and turrets explode. So it's another unique thing about Gragas. Displacement both in terms of opening up a team fight, but just taking objectives. It's not Reginald one-shotting people under a turret anymore with AP Gragas, but the same flavor is equally effective.
Yeah, you're able to move them out of the way, and when you can create a siege comp out of what would otherwise be a pretty bad one, things definitely working out well. Avoidless playing that one quite nicely, of course. Has had an interesting performance so far. Some of his explosive casts haven't been quite in the right position, but has landed a few that have changed the fights, and it's based off one. If they get one fantastic one, can snowball that into a whole bunch of objectives. That's all Avoidless needs in this game.
But Atlas, let's be equal here. The same thing can be said about the Shockwave, you have to say. There's always the big Shockwave that will take out a team. That's the exciting thing, is that in LPL versus LSBL competition, it's execution focus. It's execution of one or two core abilities that will be the difference between who wins and loses. And for Legend Dragon to have such an even game in this step up is very impressive to me.
It really, really is. That being said, he's finished Frozen Heart and the Spirit Visage. This is a huge burst of tankiness to come through from this Trundle. Now with 30% cooldown reduction just sitting in his inventory, probably has a few runes and masteries there to help him towards that 40%, but when he can just chomp, chomp, chomp away on these champions, the extra little bit of slow that you get from that, of course, having the Pillar of Ice there at the same time, Man, this Trundle is going to be a monster there in the backside, and I wonder whether the On The Hunt is going to be enough movement speed to escape him.
I mean, there's quite a lot of factors to consider with a Trundle, just because obviously a team fight where he runs up to Maokai, subjugates him, then just kills the AD carry. That's the dream for Trundle.
Oh, yeah.
But how do you actually create that in a fight? Do you get a flank with Trundle? How do you walk past the Defile that has the Rylai's riding on it, the Layways, all the disengaged CC from a Voidless and Love Eat Potato on the Gragas and Maokai? I mean, Thresh is going to throw a box in there somewhere. You're still a melee range auto attacker. That's one of the least prominent roles in competitive League of Legends is melee DPS. There's a reason you don't see Master Yi, because in the best case scenario, absolutely gets a lot of kills, but in a regular scenario, struggles to cap close, gets kited. The reality that could still happen to Let Me, even though he's about as tanky as anyone can be.
Yeah, he is a gigantic troll here on this map at the moment. Actually going to head to the top side of the map to push that one out. Baron buff has, of course, worn out here. Legend Dragon, they were able to get the outer turret for it, but that was about all she wrote for that one.
Need the Void Staff on Karthus. You see the blasting one in the inventory.
Yep.
That's probably going to be the pickup. About 1,000 gold away from it. Currently no big objectives to fight over. The 4th Dragon, not ideal to pass over to Gumty, but they may have to see that as it's coming up in 2 minutes. It's a really close game, and right now it's just about a war of wards. So far the defensive warding better for Gumty, but no team actually has one single aggressive ward on the map.
Yeah, Zhao actually picks up the Liandry's Torment here. A bit of shades of Godv there as well. Coming through with that item pickup, able to burst through definitely neutral objectives as well as these high health targets.
I'm a super big fan of the Liandry's, as we might see a pick.
Yeah, actually, Sync Dream taking a whole lot of damage. He does almost manage to get the Command Protect, but it doesn't come through. Tail at a really nice position, but that Shockwave only onto Love Eat Potato has Let Me trying to tank up these members. He is doing a lot of healing. Flashes out as well. I wonder whether that Requiem's going to take him down. No, not going to happen this time. Is the Frozen Domain going to save his life? It's a 1-for-1 only so far, as Let Me just on a wild goose chase around the base.
But Legend Dragon fought that really smartly, Atlas. If that's a preview of future team fights, this will be a Game 1 win to Legend Dragon. The Shockwave again awkwardly hits on just Love Eat Potato. Xiaohu, you need to really re-examine it. You need to hit a big Shockwave.
Yeah, Tail actually doesn't get hit by that Death Sentence, as well as Voidless actually going to flash his way in here. Xiaohu going to fall down immediately. Tail trying to kite this one out. Love Eat Potato, one more crit here from Tail is going to be enough as Sync Dream locks down the kill, and he gets excited now. Tail with that minigun ripping through the members of LD, and Kabe trying to get some work done as well. Flashes forward, so aggressive, and he's going to die as Tail picks up a triple.
Definitely a fight of two halves, but meanwhile, as you say, Let Me takes out the inhibitor.
That's ridiculous. Let Me just sort of wandered up through the enemy jungle and into that top lane. He's now going to transition towards the mid lane as well as the rest of Gamti. They can do what they want, and man, that was just a little bit of an overdive there for LD.
So Let Me, I'm not even sure if he teleported back to base. Remember, we saw him not fall down to the Requiem, suddenly see him up the top lane. Now he's in mid.
And at full health and takes down the inhibitor turret. This Trundle is just doing whatever he wants. He's doing a Mundo impression.
He's trundling them, Atlas.
He is most definitely just trundling around, picking up what he wants, and that is a second inhibitor. That is insane.
So much attack speed from the Frozen Domains. Does it still actually give attack speed? I believe it does. And then just the auto attack reset has the Ravenous Hydra and the cooldown reduction, as you mentioned. He basically just won the game for Gamti in all but name.
Yeah, and he's almost got what I would assume is going to be a Thornmail as well. And when you've got Subjugate running, it's going to be very difficult for Kabe to do anything.
Sivir was never the ideal champion for DPSing down those frontline tanks with damage threats. Shyvana versus Sivir, one of the oldest matchups in the league where Shyvana would just put the damage out. Usually we don't associate the Trundle with damage, but the sustained damage and the healing coming through. The peel chains need to going to be on, because at this point, with your base in ruins from solely the Trundle, the next team fight, if it goes to Gamti, this game is over.
The thing that's completely insane to me is the fact that Let Me started this game 0-2-0, had a horror beginning.
He still hasn't got any kills.
Still hasn't got any kills, but he's taken down the majority of the base.
I mean, the MVP with 1 score involvement only out of 26. The kill participation there, not that high, Atlas, but the effectiveness of his play, it's off the charts.
It is off the charts. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, you can't just look at the score to see how well a player is doing. Of course, Let Me, not quite up there in the score department, but he tanked up 4 members of LD, allowing the rest of Gamti to, you know, at least limp out of the last team fight. then took down the whole base.
And now their position is completely compromised, having to cull all these super minion waves. It's no longer Rod of Ages Maokai, so Love Eat Potato in the top lane struggling with the super minion wave. And Baron threat is consistent. The moment these wards drop off, you know this Baron's going to come down for Gamti.
Yeah, and Legend Dragon, they have to respect the split push coming through. Continued.
Well, they did last time, and they definitely do now.
Yeah, they most certainly do. But Baron's going to go down. And Voidless steals it away, gets shockwaved for his trouble. But that Baron, stealing it from Gamti, that's a big deal because now they'll have Baroned up creeps to help them with this defense.
What an insane seesaw game this has been. That Baron steal, as you mentioned, negates all the hard work from Let Me because there should be super minion waves in every way, in every lane. Just move a member there. They're not doing it in mid. They'll lose their minion wave. And Gamti are trying to get inner turret damage, Nexus turret damage, and just rotate to this bottom lane.
Yeah, of course, if there are no minions there, they can't get the Baron buff on them. That is definitely important as the Chomp is going to come through. Love Eat Potato taking a lot of damage from the distance there as well as Let Me just doesn't take any damage here as Kabe trying to kite around him. Tail gets the first kill now as Karthus going to get locked down by the Dark Binding. Sync Dream's been brilliant this game. Southwind going to get himself killed at the same time. Requiem doesn't net too much as Kabe's going to fall down. Gamti, they're very low, but they almost score the ace as a Voidless. He's just back up.
And Let Me dies at the end of the fight, but take a bow. What a wonderful solo tank play.
Oh, another shockwave. A Voidless, that's the ace.
But what a crazy game. Legend Dragon came into this game strong, fell away, then again looked great, but it was all on Let Me with his split push, getting Gamti this 1-0 victory. And Legend Dragon then have to go back into that strategy pool, find something different, because Gamti, they stole this game away.
Yeah, and we always talk about Taylor as being this corky player who's fantastic in the mid game. That was some fantastic late game Jinx play as well, able to turn around that fight in the bottom lane, then just doing so much consistent damage. Really beautiful stuff from the Gamti lineup, but Legend Dragon, they most certainly came here to play, and I'm looking forward to see whether they can shake off some nerves and come back strong in the second game.
And look, there's a reason that Gamti run these Juggernaut or Jugger Jinx comps. They run these Protect These AD carry comps because they do respect the power of Tail, not necessarily in the Western scene regarded as one of the top AD carries in the LPL, but Gamti always put a lot of pressure on him, but sometimes the other members fall down. Sometimes they never get to that situation where they really empower Tail to carry, but an impressive carry performance at the end, all off the back of rotational play and rotational play only. No kills, 4 assists, 4 deaths, but what a performance. Take a bow, Let Me. Excellent Trundle.
Yeah, Let Me, the first player to get an MVP without a kill. But ladies and gentlemen, this is a best of 5. We're going to have a short break, but we'll be back very soon with Game 2 between Gamti and Legend Dragon. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our English coverage of the LPL Promotion Series. I am Atlas, this is Papa, Smithy, and Ganti. They managed to take Game 1 against LD, and we'll see whether they can continue this trend or whether it's going to be something different here, whether we're going to see an LSPL team really take it back towards this LPL lineup.
It was a really close game, Atlas. There was a game of inches, especially in the early game where Legend Dragon, they were the team that creeped to a little bit of a lead, taking 2 turrets from Letme, but Letme was the one to have the last laugh, trundling his way around the map on Trundle, taking out turrets, split pushing, completely disregarding the Maokai, and that's kind of the unique flavor of the Trundle, is that he can just do so much turret damage with his auto attack cancel, with his Ravenous Hydra buy, and Maokai just doesn't have the damage to pressure him out after enough items.
Yeah, it just didn't happen, and yep, he lost a couple of turrets early, but he took a couple of inhibitors late, and that is most definitely a decent trade if you are the Trundle player, and Letme had a brilliant performance. Sync Dream as well, able to start up the fights really nicely on his Morgana as well, picking up a whole lot of Dark Bindings that really turn things around. And when Sync Dream's on form, Ganti look a whole lot better.
And ironically, the only query for Ganti was the Orianna pick. It didn't feel like Xiao Hu was playing in his wheelhouse. Multiple shockwaves going wide. Didn't cost the victory in the end, but has to look to his teammates, Letme, Tail, and Sync Dream in particular, for really picking up the slack. So maybe you want to see him move away from the Oreo to another control mid, if that's what fits the comp. But carry, that's what I always love to see coming out of Xiao Hu, because when he's playing from the front with damage, he is a sight to behold.
Yeah, he's amazing on a whole lot of these AD carries, even in the mid lane as well, as you were mentioning. And really, really nice stuff. But we are into Champion Select, ladies and gentlemen. Kalista and Sejuani going to be taking some time out here on the side of LD, and it's going to be Vladimir Nunu taken off the board here for Ganti. And the Morgana, the Respect ban to come through. Same bans for Ganti this time around, but LeBlanc going to be considered here for Passer, and that would be a definite change of pace here from the Karthus. And Xiao Hu, now he can just counterpick whatever he wants. Huey thinking about the Grungle.
Yeah, Passer blind picking the LeBlanc seems to harken back to previous LD strategies where they were a bit more mid-centric, where the likes of Ari and Zed were always considerations for the mid lane. LeBlanc still very strong on this patch, but it opens up a lot of control options, with Chalice only being 900 gold, faster to pick up that item, faster to start pushing out the wave clear, just negating a lot of the lane pressure from LeBlanc. But you just look over to players like Pawn to see how powerful this pick can be in the right hands.
It is ridiculous, and Passer will see what he can do with that one as a Voidless. Thinking about an Annie support here for Southwind. Unless it's going to go into the top lane. Of course, we have seen it before.
It's still in the LPL. The top lane Annie Dream, Master 3 are into the semifinals. We could see it.
We certainly could, ladies and gentlemen. But Xiao Hu and Tail now considering what they're going to take here. They can sort of safely pick up a mid laner now if they want to, as Tail thinking about the Lucian. And that's a flex pick.
The crazy world we live in is a Lucian flex pick. There's no rush for Xiao Hu to lock in a mid laner, because of course they do have the red side 5th pick. Have shown the Lucian middle before. Has a decent laning matchup against the Sivir, so that's fine as well. We didn't comment on the fact that the big laning matchup from Week 1, the Sivir Annie, rose to priority again with all the priority Sivir picks coming through. The instant CC coming in for the engage with the on the hunt into potentially the secondary CC during the duration of that move speed increase makes this a really powerful pick lane for LD.
Yeah, looking nice so far. We'll see how they round this one out, as the consideration is going to be what was the Maokai. Now thinking about a Rise, we'll see whether that's going to come through. But Rek'Sai here for a Voidless, another one of the champions that he does favor. And we saw, especially yesterday, Rek'Sai still an incredible force there in the jungle. And they're really focusing a whole lot earlier, apart from the Rise pickup on the side of LD. And man, if this was a Darius...
It's not going to be a Darius.
That would have been a lot of early game focus, though, Papa Smith.
It would have been, but
my point would have been proved.
Shyvana makes a lot of sense. Of course, Teleport Smite already being hovered over. That is the other Teleport Smite laner of note. Probably has the more reliable laning phase. Definitely has a bit more lane pressure, just throwing on that burnout and running through the creeps. But top lane, Teleport Smite Hecarim, has catapulted his way to probably the most contested top lane pick of any champion. The way you can deal so effectively with an enemy AD carry, with the Cinderhulk, with the challenging Smite, into the Trinity Force, into just the Home Guard boots. That 3-item core, 2 of which, of course, the boots and the Cinderhulk, not too expensive, and the Trinity Force, a massive purchase on Hecarim. The damage threat onto Sivir, a 500 range carry that we spent so much time explaining, struggles to put damage out because she has to respect ranges. She has to respect the horse when he's present or when he's not, because the teleport flank is always possible.
Yeah, and we'll see whether that one comes through. But I want to talk about this Kassadin lock-in here for Xiaohu. We saw Assassin last night playing that Kassadin so beautifully against an Azir of all champions, even in the laning phase. But we'll see how he goes against Passes LeBlanc. And this matchup historically was fine for Kassadin, but now that he's been changed, I'm not sure how that one goes.
I feel like the laning phase will be similar, Atlas, just because you max the Q instead of, say, the Force Pulse, for example, and just look for those guaranteed trades. Not a skill shot, so you can just throw it out, get the magic resist shield, and LeBlanc has a very low base health to belie the fact that she's such a lane bully, so I feel like it'll be fine for Kassadin. He'll, of course, scale and potentially get very, very scary. We've already seen carry performances from Kassadin as recently as that EDG vs. WE Game 5. But the wave clear, that's the one consideration. For both teams, Sivir excluded, is very low.
Yeah, well, we'll see how the game develops based on that one, though, as Pasa and Xiaohu there, as you mentioned, have to get into melee range in order to clear out those waves. Of course, Pasa able to get back out pretty quickly, as is Xiaohu after a couple of extra seconds, but you can see the bottom lane, the sort of low-range carries. More mobility there for Tail, and we'll see how he goes here on this Lucian. And Sync Dream, he's picked up the Thresh this time and had an MVP performance in the last game. We'll see whether he can repeat it here.
I mean, the lane swap's going to be the big consideration. We've seen a lot of teams opting into the lane swap with that Hecarim to get the very strong jungle follow with the smite. But remember, both these laners have the teleport smite. Both laners, to some degree, priced into the jungle follow to make that use of the early smite in particular and get the clearing going. We've seen Shyvana take these games early, but the late game, as we mentioned, Hecarim just so good at being that anti-AD carry.
Yeah, and is it a little bit better to be Sivir here with the spell shield? Of course, you can at least manage to shield away the onslaught of shadows.
I mean, there's always other threats, Atlas. The thing is, you can't necessarily hold on to that spell shield long enough. And it's the burst damage as well that could be massive.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are onto the Rift with LD versus Gamti. Game 2 here. Gamti looking to try and make this one a swift 3-0 victory, but LD now with a very different team comp. Not looking to scale up, looking for those mid-game fights. We'll see how this one goes. Of course, much more of a defensive fan coming through from our LD friends, as they're not looking for any particular lane swap. More than happy to have Sivir Annie go up against whatever they want, and Gamti will see how they react. And it looks like they're going to opt in for that 2v2. The wife steal bottom lane, happy to head down there.
It'll be just amusing to see, despite the fact that it looks like it's going to be standard 2v2 lanes, it's going to take a while for these top lanes to actually enter lane. The first one that calls the bluff and actually gets to early, maybe even use the smite to cause a bit of a jungle top lane push, might actually get the experience advantage. But until you have that extra information, you're just priced in to start at a jungle camp and go from there.
Yep, the cramps in the jungle.
Jungle cramping your style when it comes to laning.
That was beautiful. Well transitioned there, Papa Smithy has let me. He's going to start on the Krugs. Red buff start here for Huey on his own. A little bit sad, but able to get a bit of health back there from using the smite as a Voidless. Actually going to smite away the Krugs. This is really cute. And then head back over to this red buff with the Krug buff, able to stun up this camp as well. So a little bit nice, able to get very early experience onto this bottom lane of LD, as it's actually going to be the Gromp started for Gamti. So even as far as that experience is concerned, they might actually meet in this lane at about the same time.
So, I mean, Rek'Sai has a very safe clear, so I don't mind this decision coming through. But the thing to consider, Atlas, is that if you're not getting a leash, the ability to smite that red gives you, effectively more than a potion's worth of level there. Like, it gives you a big heal that you might necessarily need to continue clearing the jungle. How much clearing can this Rek'Sai do? Level 2 hit instantly on both lanes. Very even trading in the bot.
Yeah, even, but Sync Dream taking a lot of damage, sort of in exchange for some health here, still available from Tail. The heal actually popped from Kabe, maybe a little bit frightened. The Death Sentence didn't actually land, so maybe a little bit unnecessary, but they do now have the health advantage there on the bottom side, despite the fact that Tail quite healthy in comparison to Sync Dream.
Amusingly, his predictive ability to juke a skill shot was better than his predictive use of the heal. I just assumed that the Death Sentence was going to hit and need that heal early. Respecting the ignite, you have to say, from Sync Dream if that Death Sentence did register, but the result is a heal dragged out by Gamti.
And look at Letme, he is so far ahead as far as that farm is concerned. Love Eat Potato is going to be able to clear out this wave now, but the horse, as you mentioned, doesn't have quite as good a laning phase, but you could almost be proven wrong by Letme here in this situation.
He didn't shop Atlas. That's the big consideration, is that Shyvana went back, maybe took an extra jungle camp and shop. Letme notice that, hey, there's no one in this top lane. It's actually a 1v1, and went straight to lane, got the big purchase. Now answers with his teleport of his own. But yeah, it's still very even, but slightly in the advantage of Gamti.
Yeah, does have the flask as well as that ruby crystal. Only a ruby crystal available here for Love Eat Potato, but no mana in order to regen it up, and not going to be too worried about not quite having as much sustain up there, as inherently as a Hecarim, that Spirit of Dread going to give you a whole lot more of that option anyway.
I mean, look, Spirit of Dread, especially in early levels, not that big a sustain tool. The minion cap ensures that you just can't use that necessarily as a sustain tool, but as you go on, if you use it effectively, of course, the spell vamp in team fights, so much extra effective sustain for the Hecarim.
Yeah, and Love Eat Potato now trying to clear out this wave. As we mentioned, Spirit of Dread going to be used. Actually a bit of damage there onto Love Eat Potato, but top lane not going to be all that interesting as far as that is concerned. Huey is going to discover a Voidless down here in the jungle, but he just tunnels his way out. That's going to be fine, and we'll see how this Rek'Sai goes. We've seen Rek'Sais be very, very impactful towards the early stages of the game, but haven't seen a Voidless do too much just yet.
The struggle there for a Voidless is that we mentioned it, Atlas. It was actually you that summated it very early. This is a mid-game comp coming through from LD. You'd say basically every lane, to different degrees, gets outscaled by what Gamti has provided. You'd expect Hecarim in the late game to be more effective than Shyvana, although apologies to Shyvana, still a very strong late game team fighter. Gragas has more utility than the Rek'Sai, so you would take him in the late game just for that potential disengage. Casanova LeBlanc, that's a very standard matchup. Lucian just edging out the Sivir, and Thresh maybe a little bit more flexible than Annie. So because this champion select is kind of lopsided instead of late game threat, you need Rek'Sai to pull off ganks like this to get Legend Dragon snowballing, because in the late game they just haven't picked for a comp to stand up against Gamtis.
Yeah, well, it's not quite working, but a Voidless at least making the right moves here, attempted to get down, but of course Prey Seeker was all he was able to really offer, as Tail and Sync Dream were able to at least disengage far enough to avoid a successful gank. Passer actually looking for something here as Yahoo's going to get hit by the chains. A Voidless comes through. First blood picks up by the Rek'Sai. And I take back everything I said. I ate those words so quickly.
Excellent clinical play from a Voidless in particular with the flash on Burrow. Love Eat Potato's fallen way behind in CS, but hey, a kill credit be nice. No CC though. Means he can't stay on top of Huey.
Yeah, Huey actually heading away from the jungle here. Was able to clear out some camps there as well. Now has a 5 CS advantage, but unable to get that successful gank, and the 400 gold from the first blood going to help a Voidless out to no end, as that Chilling Smite is going to be complemented by the Cinder Hulk buff a little bit quicker. Balmy Cinder probably going to be completed next, as Passer was able to pick up the Chalice of Harmony and a book on top of it. This Twin Bite doing some work here to Let Me as well, and this lane was going well for the horse earlier on, but the Dragon now able to get some damage back. Oh, Dragon's Descent. Not going to quite find him, as Let Me just going to take the long way around. We'll make it back to this wave as it crashes into the turret, and we'll see whether Love Eat Potato can get anything from it. Let Me able to smite away that minion to stop from dying to the turret, but doesn't pick up anything else, and everything going to be fine.
It's just very... Oh my goodness. Wraparound gank.
Yep, the return coming through. Yahoo looking for enough Riftwalks, but doesn't quite have them. Does have a lot of health with that Catalyst still available. Riftwalks over the top. Is Distortion going to be up? No, it's not. And Passer unable to pick up that kill, and that is why you have to focus down the Kassadin before level 6. And thankfully, they did manage to do that before.
But look, it's definitely going to delay the timing coming out of this Rite of Ages, because he gets kind of bullied every time he goes for CS. He's fallen 15 CS behind despite being even, purely from the pressure from a Voidless who's got an extra kill credit over to himself, but started up this extra pressure, because remember, we know that Xiaohu's chunked out in the mid lane. They cannot react to this jungle steal.
Yeah, actually Let Me coming through, finds a couple of members of LD here, but is going to have to back away. Some nice engages coming through as Let Me. He's found Love Eat Potato, doesn't have his ultimate available. There's no flash on this Shyvana. The Rampages doing some work, but no level 6 for Huey. Not going to be able to throw him back, and Shyvana was just a little bit too tanky.
The Onslaught of Shadow is already used for gap clear, so that's why gap close, so that's why we haven't seen that cooldown used in the fight. Let Me will continue to grow this CS advantage. Shyvana should be winning this lane matchup. In terms of trade damage, you saw a preview when the Flame Bite and the Burnout was used, how strong the 2v2 damage is, the 1v1 damage is between Shyvana and Hecarim. And then the jungling should be much better as well. We always know that Burnout does that bonus damage to monsters, so should be able to power down those camps. So in both a 1v1 laning phase and just exiting the lane, you tip the advantage to Shyvana in the early game, but Let Me, he's doing some amazing things, whether it's the Trundle last game or navigating a 17 CS advantage on Hecarim versus Shyvana. His top lane play, a big highlight of this quarterfinal so far.
Yeah, really looking fantastic, but Huey has been struggling a little bit on this Gragas pick, not really having quite the effect of a jungle Gragas, but is that because Gragas doesn't quite have any real impact in a gank too early on?
He has decent burst tools in a gank, but remember, he's ganking for Hecarim, who has no CC till level 6. He's ganking for Cassical.
Flash Tibbers there in the bottom lane. His tail has to relentlessly pursue his way out. Sync Dream fairly tanky, and that was the burst. That was it. And it didn't manage to net a kill.
Yeah, but the culling is not available, so cannot do any sort of ranged farm. He even has to respect the Tibbers burn damage coming through.
Yeah, might actually kill himself if he does too many auto attacks here. Doesn't. But of course, that Molten Shield now being on Tibbers, a lot of people forget that.
That was a very scary bear coming out. You normally only have to respect the burst damage, but literally there was kill pressure under the turret from his pet.
Yeah, from the Tibbers. Tibbers is a very frightening unit coming down from Southwind.
Let.Me is still bossing around Love Eat Potato. I have to question whether Love Eat Potato has a lot of practice on these top lane smite laners like Shyvana, because this is a favorable lane matchup and a favorable earlier power spike for the Shyvana. We always know the item timings that Hecarim's looking for. Doesn't have any of them, not even the Cinderhulk. It is already easily navigating this lane against Shyvana.
Yeah, 27 CS in the lead. He's going to finish that Cinderhulk now. Might be able to grab a Ruby Crystal, start his way towards that Phage as well. And Cinderhulk completed. Does have a Pink Ward in his back pocket inventory as well. That is going to be fine, just wandering back towards this lane as well. And do you go for the boots too? Do you go for that home guard earlier on, or do you start that Trinity Force as soon as you can?
I think you kind of take the temperature of the game and work out which purchase makes the most sense. If one of your lanes is far behind, at least home guards gives you every 5 minutes an intensely strong potential for gank, burst damage, and the CC from the Onslaught of Shadows. If you're just happily laning, if you're even or ahead in your other lanes and you're contesting for dragons happily, just opt into the Trinity Force. That's the bigger power spike. That's the most expensive of the options, and you can always piecemeal finish your boots at a later stage.
Yeah, and you can see here, actually, it is going to be Kabe and Pasa doing so well in their lanes. You can see Xiaohu's fallen very far behind, about 40 CS here, as this LeBlanc almost able to get even the turret down. And Xiaohu, after a brilliant performance in the earlier stages of last game, just can't do anything here.
I mean, Avoidless is the MVP of this mid lane matchup.
Oh, yeah.
Before the gank that was successful, where they picked up the first blood, Xiaohu was actually even in CS, so it was 37 to 37 or 37 to 38. Now from the gank and the pressure and the snowball of items that have come through, a 42 CS advantage completely off the bat.
Yeah, Tibbers onto Sync Dream here as well. Does throw down the box, but doesn't get over the wall with the flash. And LD, these Tibbers plays are pretty huge from Southwind.
And there's a reason that Annie stands next to Janna as the priority support pick, as the instant cast on the initiation of the Tibbers does so many great things. And when you have Sivir, when you have On the Hunt, don't even have to be gated around your flash every 4 to 5 minutes when the distortion boots come through. Tibbers comes out quickly and instantly Sync Dream dies.
Yeah, and they take down the Dragon off the back of it as well. So 2-0 in the lead here for LG.
All the gold on the Cinderhulk jungler isn't ideal, but we saw Clearlove go the same route and just stack health and be completely unkillable and do consistent damage. And now it's all on Avoidless to do his best Clearlove impression.
Yeah, we'll see whether he can manage that one. Of course, it is the top lane that's the only worry here for LD, as Love Eat Potato not quite having the game that he really wants to. Has gone back, does have his Cinderhulk completed, as well as the Cloth Armor. But Southwind, he gets played back into the team. Let.Me's looking for Kabe as well, gets skirmished out of this one. The ultimate's still available, as Onslaught of Shadows might be used, but not going to, as Dark Passage going to take him out of there. And Gamti, they hold back.
It's definitely a home guard boots, or maybe Sheen short of having the damage to turret dive the Sivir especially. Heal still up. Probably was communicated to the horse, so smart of him to disengage. The teleport for nothing, and this is finally some space for Love Eat Potato to just hoover up some laves with the burnout and try and equalize the CS in top.
Yeah, Let.Me almost with the Phage completed, has boots 1 now as well, and he's pretty quick as he heads back towards this top side of the map. No extra damage going to be put down by Love Eat Potato, who wants to try and dirty farm this one out. Gamti looking to take down the bottom turret. Oh my goodness, so close. Kabe taking a bit of damage from the culling, but going to be too worried. Avoidless now has been discovered by the members of Gamti as Xiaohu does manage to get out of there. Is he going to be able to get the last Q? Huey flashes. Kabe picks up tail on the bottom side as Lovey Potatoes coming around the back, and Xiaohu is in so much trouble. No mana though for Pasa. Does still manage to pick up the kill, and Avoidless now trying to turn this one around. The horse coming through. Let Me sort of finds himself on the other side, and that did not work out very well. And I don't know what happened there in the bottom lane, but that's no good here for Gamti, and LD really utilizing their mid-game power spikes.
You see the value of health stacking in a snowball situation. They use so much focus fire, cooldowns, mana pool, trying to take down this Rek'Sai. And Rek'Sai just so damn tanky with their health pool, already at 1855 health at 14 minutes. And then just skips away. Of course, has regen when burrowed away. Got away. They had no cooldowns left to deal with the oncoming cavalry, and they get taken out. So 4-1 is a very considerable lead for LG. And it's finally starting to open up a bit of space for Shyvana to get back into this lane.
Goodness. 1,800 gold is the lead for Pasa here in the mid lane. Xiaohu so far behind. You can see it's a lot to do with that CS, but global gold's there as well, as it's 2 turrets to nothing here in favor of LG. The bottom lane, of course, is very, very low. Gamti will be able to collect that one relatively soon, but they do really need to start taking some damage control into account this game, Gamti, and hold out until their later game power spikes come through.
Reminiscent of game 1, though, you'd have to say, Atlas. Operation win lane win game, which is what LD are looking for with, you know, the strong early power spikes. We mentioned the fact they have earlier power spikes in every lane. They've taken 2 turrets. They have CS advantages in multiple lanes. Okay, it's slim in the bottom lane, but quite considerable in mid. And Shyvana's starting to get pressure on this top lane as well. They're building up a gold lead, but as you mentioned, they need to keep expanding. They need to keep taking objectives, start pushing up their ward coverage, and start contesting, for example, the enemy blue buff. They have mid turret down and bottom turret down. This next blue respawn should be LD's and deny even more resources from Xiaohu on this Kassadin.
Yeah, Gamti, they do have it warded up. They've got a lot of vision around that area. We'll see whether they take advantage of it. Of course, teleport's not available for either of our top laners, but Lovey Potato going to have his a little bit sooner, as everyone's going to be collapsing around that area. And Papa Smithy, you're right, as Death Sentence going to land onto a Voidless, but Tail, he's going to escape using that Dark Passage very, very nicely.
LD at least know what they need to do. That's the thing. I always talk about teams like King, who struggle to realize their win conditions. LD understand. Got mid turret, got bottom outer turret. So much extra space to get wards. What's the easiest thing to contest for? It's both Dragon and, if you're really being aggressive, which LD need to do with their earlier power spikes, the enemy blue.
Yeah, Let Me actually discovered here by Lovey Potato. Skirmisher actually going to be used on the horsey, who just devastatingly charges his way away.
But those sort of trades should have summated 16 minutes of laning, not this laning phase at 16 minutes. Let Me should have been well behind 20, 30 CS, much like Xiaohu. That's why I'm a bit kind of puzzled as to what happened in the early levels. You usually don't spend too much time looking at 2 teleport smite tank top laners who are exiting lane before and after every trade, but you'd have to say Let Me was doing trade damage and winning those trades.
Yeah, Huey's actually discovered Lovey Potato here as well. He's going to use the ultimate just to escape over the Baron Pit wall. Sync Dream's going to find him, but not too much going to go on. Of course, a Voidless hanging around in the wings as well. As actually, there's the Mimic Distortion coming through. Pasa trying to trade with Tail, who answers back quite nicely. But Pasa probably needs to hit the Mimic Distortion in order to do any sort of terminal damage here to Tail.
You definitely can't afford to use any of your spells for gap clearing, especially when you're against a Lucian who, with Infinity Edge, has the potential to get multiple crits even from that 20% chance. Because again, both those passive hits counters auto attacks. They work into that 20% chance. We've seen, of all mid laners, of all AD carries, Vasily get 3 crits in 1 rotation of spells. That's the potential. You really have to judge your damage optimally against a Lucian, because the punishment can be severe.
Well, very much is. Kabe going to clear out this mid wave. Void Rush going to be used to this bottom side of the map. Dragon up in 2 seconds. And a Voidless well and truly in position. And you can see LD with so much vision around the area. Dragon number 2 going to be going down with no contest here from Gamti.
It couldn't be cleaner, Atlas. This is excellent play from LD.
Yeah.
Winning those early lane matchups, excellent early pressure from a Voidless, and then I mean, a beautiful like star or triangle of wards around this dragon. The safest dragon ever. Should be able to contest for every future blue buff. Keep playing this style, and you will win this series. But it's hard to engineer this kind of scenario multiple times in a best of 5.
Well, we'll see whether they can, of course. This game definitely still in contention here for Gamti, especially if Xiaohu manages to get some extra damage down, pick up a couple of kills, because we haven't seen a team fight at all this game. We don't know what one looks like.
And that suits LD, but to some degree it suits Gamti, just because LD are happy to pick up the objectives, and that's just been Gamti seeding objectives, so they're not giving away multiple kills and objectives to this team of LD. But the power spikes, they're coming through slowly. Phage and most of Machine completed for the Hecarim. The Rod of Ages stacking up for the Kassadin. Items coming through for all their carries. They're trying to lose the minimum, Atlas, and it works sometimes and it doesn't work other times.
Yeah, and Kassadin was discovered there just a little bit. We are going to have a slight pause, though, ladies and gentlemen, as hopefully Xiaohu's going to be okay. We'll see whether a Voidless manages to lock him down for long enough. Of course, it's difficult to lock down that Kassadin, but so far, LD with a much better performance.
It's just a very clean performance. It's not something we expect necessarily from an LSPL team, so we have to credit them for what they're doing. They're playing Gamti off the park in the first 20 minutes. I mean, the one thing you can say, though, about this second rung or LSPL competition versus top teams is that closing out is not necessarily the strong point of these lower level teams. So they've got themselves an advantage. We'll just have to monitor and wait to see if they can continue to grow it before the natural comp advantages for Gamti start to hit in around the 30-35 minute mark.
And we've seen Gamti as well able to team fight very, very well if they get the right situations, and they are able to orchestrate these in the past, or they have been in the past. So we'll see whether they can do that as well, whether that's going to be their way back in here with just a little bit more coordination, a little bit more teamwork available here from this more veteran team.
I'm still in awe at the amount and precision of the wards. Look at this blue side for Gamti on the minimap. Maybe it's back to your point, though, a bit, Alice. It's probably over-warding, but it's impressive to look at.
Yeah, and vision allowed them.
Okay, but that vision cost them. I mean, even if we're talking about sheer ward cost, a lot. But Sync Dream?
Yeah. Tibber's not going to net the kill, but it is going to be the Ignite that burns him down. Southwind probably should have figured that one out. But Tibber's just going to hang out in that brush as a bit of a makeshift ward. So they get the blue buff, they get a pick as well, and Xiaohu going aggressive onto Kabe. Still has a lot of his health here, as that trade was very nicely played. Let me putting a bit of pressure here on this top side of the map. Love Eat Potato going to have to answer that one. No teleport for either of these top laners, as now LD looking to pressurize the bottom side, and
they should group the Sivir with the Gragas just so they can get that turret damage down.
Oh my goodness, that W actually doing a lot of work there, as well as On the Hunt is popped, and Kabe is playing a whole lot more scared this game than he was in the last.
I mean, you have to respect initiation pressure of the Gragas, for example. The damage from the Kassadin in a long lane. You can always kill pressure. With all these wards, though.
Knocks him out of the body slam. There is a nice explosive cast, as we do have the option of an escape here for Huey, but a Voidless now going to get taken down so low. He's going to die. Huey nets himself that kill. That Onslaught of Shadows was beautiful from Let Me. Turret going to fall down on the top side of the map as Love Eat Potato gets the last outer. But Gamti, they're answering some of the pressure, but that's only one kill for a turret.
Yeah, it's the clean use of the Trinity Force power spike from Let Me. Just had that item completed when he teleported in, but as you mentioned, makes his way to bottom. They lose the turret for one kill. It's not a good trade for Gamti.
No, they lose their Raptors as well, which is definitely unfortunate, as Love Eat Potato actually going to ignore the ward. Doesn't want to go toe-to-toe with Tail here just a little bit, just in case there's any extra vision. But you can see as well, LD, they've got that pink ward sitting in that top side of the map. It's been there for a long time.
Their vision is wonderful, but again, I feel like maybe they'll go through a kind of a learning process like Vici that had these sort of excellent wards, weren't playing around them well enough. They moved more to the carry mode. We saw the moment Jungle Nidalee came into the meta.
Yeah.
We saw Dandy picking that up, stopped buying the Sightstone. They still had good ward coverage because they were smart about where to put them, but the economy of wards was much lower, so they had to be more judicious. Only put wards in important places rather than literally everywhere like we saw on the blue side of Gamti earlier this game. So far, they're warding very impressive. They've been playing around them to some degree, but you worry that the items they're not building, because they're kind of putting so much gold into vision, might come to haunt them when Gamti start to hit their power specs. They need to continue to get the maximum. 3 turrets is a good start, but they need to get more.
Yeah, Xiaohu actually picking up the boots of Lucidity on his Kassadin. 25% cooldown reduction now sitting in his inventory. And how do you feel about that adaptation to the classic Kassadin build of wanting to pick up that Zhonya's Hourglass a little bit earlier?
Look, 40% CDI is a pretty core tenet to any Kassadin build. In this situation, not running cooldown reduction per level blues that have been very, very common. Has to respect LeBlanc and take that flat magic resistance to make that laning phase a little bit easier. Zhonya's would allow him to dive the backline, but the backline in general is multiple members fighting in the same area. It's not a Jinx who's sitting 700 range back that you kind of have to gap close to assassinate. It's multiple members. Like Siv's fighting with her tank line in a lot of the situations in the middle of the fight. Not going to have a stasis option, so it's going to have to be a bit more defensive positioning. Might even have to use the Force Pulse defensively for peel rather than necessarily diving the carries till that Zhonya is complete.
And it is going to be Passer pushing up this mid lane, preparing for this dragon that has just come back alive. A Voidless trying to zone away the members of Gamti, setting up this massive ring of vision yet again around this area. A few more wards now placed for Gamti though, and looks like LD definitely respecting Gamti's ability to teamfight.
Look, LD actually have teleport advantage for a couple of seconds only. They put so much effort into one. They need a pick.
Oh dear, they're looking for it. The explosive cask is going to be used, but they don't pull the trigger. LD now thinking they're just going to take the inner turret, but Sync Dream coming through doesn't land the death sentence as the culling comes through. Passer forces out at least the relentless pursuit, but it's a nice rotation. They pick up an inner turret.
And look, there's no way for Gamti to answer that with Dragon just because so many wards to clear. So predictable.
Oh my goodness, Xiaohu actually rift walked into the chains. Beautiful predictive play to come through as Lovey Potato is going to take out Huey. There's a Dragon's Descent into the backline, and this is a Shyvana with a Thornmail going nuts in this fight. Kabe picks up Sync Dream. Really beautiful stuff. And LG, their strategic play this game has been stunning.
Yeah, LD fighting as a 5-man unit, everyone fighting together, no space between the Sivir and their other threats. Usually that's a strategic hole, but Hecarim had to back away even though he has 3 big items, even though he can dive a backline, had no opportunity to do so. And it looks like Gamti awkwardly are going to have to trade their first dragon for Baron.
That is a horrible trade. They may not even be able to get it here as Tail gets taken down very, very low. My goodness, the kill from Passer as Xiaohu. He's going to have to use that Rift Walk over the wall. A Voidless may be caught out, but is it him getting caught or is it Let Me? As look at this thing on the map that's afraid of Let Me here as LD. Not worried about the horse one bit. Xiaohu taking Lovey Potato on a bit of a wild goose chase as the E is going to register. Lovey Potato able to take his base gate over that wall, so Xiaohu not going to be able to escape him that way. He has to dodge the next Flame Breath.
Can't dodge Smite.
No, you can't. And he lands the last E, so no worries there at all. And
Skill
gets
shots.
a free back.
Skill shots targeted, gets a shot. Everything's coming up Legend Dragon this game, Atlas.
Oh,
I just
yeah.
love the fact that the way they're respecting this Hecarim is just fighting as a 5-man group. So if you ever try and isolate the Sivir, you're just going to get killed by whoever's next to the Sivir. All the AoE magic damage coming through from Shyvana. LeBlanc can just change target to the frontline Hecarim that doesn't have the big tank items fit just yet. Hell, Annie's still doing pretty decent damage herself. Legend Dragon comping around Gamti great, and we haven't seen the value of the explosive cask to separate the threats because they've all been on top of each other.
Yeah, hasn't been able to work here at all, and Gamti getting to the point where even with a scaling comp, they're just looking like they can't get back into this game. Like, because of course you can say, yes, they have the late game, blah, 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 but when you have a 9,000 gold lead, you don't get to that point, and they've just got so many more items.
And the late game's always relative. Sometimes the scaling comp gets the advantage early and the late game isn't even a relevant metric to discuss. There is a time when teamfights won't be going Legend Dragon's way, but you misfire on one. Legend Dragon have all these objectives down. They can just power down the base, and then imbalances of the likes of Baron just make all scaling discussions moot. That's just the reality of competitive League of Legends, is that you can't just pick a team and say, just show up at 30 minutes, things will work out, because there's dragons, there's barons that there's dragons that stack up, there's the Baron. And Legend Dragon, they want another turret and maybe even a dive.
Yeah, they're going for it. Here's Dragon Descent there into the backline. Lovey Potato is so deep, but not taking too much damage as Kabe's going to take down Let Me. My God, that triple kill was massive and instant from Passer, doing so much AoE with the distortion. Tail goes down as well, and that is a clean ace apart from Lovey Potato. in favor of LD. Really fantastic stuff. They'll take an inhibitor. And is that going to be it?
I mean, the crazy thing is Shyvana doesn't have CC, but they all peeled onto her, and then the Mimic Distortion, instant triple kill, prompts the surrender, a necessary surrender from Gamti. And I believe this is the first game, no, not the first game that's been picked up, but of the series that I've cast, the first LSPL game picked up here for Legend Dragon, 1-1. And what a clean performance, playing around their win conditions, warding around objectives, then taking them. That's the sign of a practice team. That's the sign of an LPL team. And Legend Dragon, they're going to try and recreate that momentum this series because they really played that game well.
They looked beautiful on the Rift here. And we talked about this team being sort of a protect the AD carry base team. And yes, Kabe played fantastically. But man, it wasn't about that. Parson was brilliant. Avoidless was fantastic on the rec side. Ganti going to have to rethink their bans. But ladies and gentlemen, it's a best of 5. It's now all tied up 1-1. LD up against Gamti. We're going to have a short break, but we'll be back with Game 3 very soon. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our English coverage of the Chinese LPL promotion series. Ganti taking on LD, Legend Dragon, and Legend Dragon just tied up the series. We're now to a fresh best of 3, Papa Smithy, and Legend Dragon looked brilliant in that last one.
That's the crazy thing. This LSPL team was decisive against LPL opposition, just rotating around the map, understanding their earlier power spikes, respecting the late game potential of the likes of FLICKR and Kassadin, and just ensuring there was never a late game situation to have to navigate. Playing that decisive is not usually the sign of a second string team of an LSPL team, but they're well on the way to contesting a 5-game series.
Yeah, really looking strong moving into this one. You can see Xiaohu, my goodness, looking a little bit upset, a little bit ruffled here is the mid laner for Ganti, but we'll see whether, because he's got anger in those eyes. He's looking ready to prove himself.
And I guess what I'm learning from this series is that maybe opting into the late game against Legend Dragon isn't the way to move forward. Maybe go for those earlier power spikes, fight mid-game pick comp with mid-game pick comp, and try and just fight them at their own game, because Ganti opting into the late game certainly just left a big strategic hole. Had to watch Legend Dragon pile on the dragons, pile on the turrets, pick up a Baron in exchange for a dragon, and eventually just cede the advantage over to Legend Dragon.
Yeah, wasn't able to pick up too much, but we'll see whether Ganti can answer back. It was a decisive victory in their first match, but Legend Dragon definitely showing that maybe that was just nerves coming into the first one, and now they'll be able to carry through the next game.
I mean, Legend Dragon, we must remember, was ahead for those first 9 minutes, out-rotated Ganti to pick up 2 outer turrets and set Let Me behind, and then, of course, Let Me became that ticking time bomb on Trundle at the end of the first game. Second game, much more decisive, much more consistent, pick up an easy victory. And now we're all square. As you say, it's a best of 3, and Ganti, they need to show us something different, because the Kassadin, the Hecarim, didn't work out.
Yeah, didn't quite make it through, but we are into Champion Select. Let's see if anything changes here as Ganti. They're going to take away the Nunu and the Vladimir yet again, but LeBlanc Kalista now going to go through, and Legend Dragon, they do not want to let LeBlanc go into the hands of Xiaohu, but they really put value on that one, so they don't want to risk it.
Yeah, first pick and then first ban coming through from Legend Dragon. On patch 5.6 of all patches, Atlas, they ban away the LeBlanc. LeBlanc's been kind of a point of failure for a lot of teams, just not being able to deal with those tanky members in the late game. But the excellent ganking pressure. I think giving away LeBlanc and Rek'Sai is the big hole. If you have an excellent ganker from level 2 and the high damage, you get punished. The adaptation ban, the Sivir comes through, but that leaves Lulu up for first pick.
Yeah, Ganti going to lock that one away as quickly as possible here, and I find it interesting that they put that much emphasis on picking away the Lulu when the Rek'Sai is available there. Huey has had fantastic performances on that champion. Of course, Pentakill in his first game on Rek'Sai, not too much of a bad example there, as LD thinking about a Janna here for the bottom lane, and we'll see what a Voidless is going to take it. Wouldn't surprise me if it was the Rek'Sai. Of course, he was fantastic on that champion early on, but might have been to do with the fact that he could gank a lane that is as powerful as LeBlanc early.
I think there's just a lot of synergy between LeBlanc and Rek'Sai, as we mentioned, but leaving Rek'Sai open, not taking it away, that's a big surprise to me. I feel like you have to take that champion where available. Let Me played a very good top Lulu in recent weeks, so I feel like that's going to be the mage of choice for the top lane. Not so much the Kassadin top anymore, but the Lulu top might have to be what Let Me's left with. Seems more comfortable on these top lane mages than he is on the tanks. Ganti have done this a lot. They've gone for the Protect the Jinx comp, and at least for these first 3 picks, that's all we can assume.
Yeah, Kabe thinking about a Vayne. Not sure whether that one is going to go through, but of course, definitely is going to be the case here for Ganti, and sort of trying to take it to Legend Dragon at their own game.
Interesting what Legend Dragon do now that they know that they're effectively against a Protect the Jinx comp. They're so experienced themselves with Protect the Kog'Maw that they might go for the real mid-game power. The Rek'Sai picked, I expect that. Don't think we're going to see the Imp-style Misfortune coming through.
Yeah, Misfortune may not be the option here. Kabe is going to move over to something else. Still aiming for more of a late-game carry here if Twitch or Kog'Maw are going to be locked in, and Kabe locks in his signature Kog'Maw there. Doesn't have any Juggermaw ability coming through, but of course the Protect the Kog'Maw comp still working out very well for a lot of our LPL teams. We'll see how it goes this game as Ganti now up to them to round out their lineup, and Huey thinking about one of his old staples in the Jarvan.
I mean, the big thing that comes different when you don't have the Lulu and the Morgana available to you in the Protect the Kog'Maw comp is that the Kog'Maw is going to be positioned much more defensively at the back of the fight, trying to hit the front line, rather than at the front of the fight, hitting whoever he damn well pleases. So that's the big difference with the lack of Juggernaut coming through. Janna and Kog'Maw, a lot of synergy between those two. The disengage with that big late game explosion of damage coming through from Kog'Maw. Once again, though, we see the Trundle being picked up by Letme.
Yeah, Letme going to be taking the Trundle means that Xiaohu's going to pick up the Lulu there in the mid lane. Parsa now knows exactly what's going on. We'll see what is exactly going to happen. May not actually be. Could be Morgana in the mid lane and Syncdream might play the Lulu. Who knows?
That's a good question. They do have the flexibility of either Morgana or Lulu in the mid lane. The only person who's really locked in is the top lane Trundle, but you know, there could be a top lane Jarvan, but let's be realistic. It's going to be a top lane Trundle coming through. Let me going to do his best impersonation of Game 1 and try and make that happen again. It's Trundle versus Maokai. It's the same matchup.
Yeah, Trundle versus Maokai to come through, but it is going to be Cassiopeia against the Lulu here in the mid lane. We'll see how that one goes here, as Xiaohu actually has Trundle at the moment, but see what exactly does happen as
he's played mid lane Aurelia.
He has. Letme hasn't played as much top lane Jinx. But we'll see how that goes. And it is, of course, actually, there were some interesting swaps. In the end, it didn't actually go through, but we are going to remake the lobby, ladies and gentlemen, as Gamti probably should have just tried to swap a little bit quicker than they otherwise could. But let's go through the lineups here as Letme on the Trundle yet again into the Maokai once more. And last time that matchup didn't work out so well early, but definitely did late.
Yeah, we learned that in the late game, Trundle's going to shrug off the Maokai and just take objectives under his nose. No damage potential to try and push him out of lane, so that will be a big late game consideration. I do love the fact that Cassiopeia is the choice against Lulu. Not ideal in the laning matchup, but as we load into this game, I'll start talking about the fact how Cassiopeia, with these hyper carries like Kog'Maw, is really becoming a valued pick in the competitive scene.
Yeah, because it does give you another threat that you're forced to deal with here, as well as Tail up against Kabe. The battle of the late game hyper carries here as Syncdream and Southwind trying to augment that as best they can with their shields aplenty. Of course, Syncdream, Morgana not banned away this game, had an MVP performance on it in the first one. We'll see whether that is going to be what swings this series. As we do get back into Champion Select as well, we're going to go through everything as quickly as possible and get us into this game ASAP. Of course, the third game of this best-of-5 series, and LD looking great in the last one. We'll see whether they can carry that momentum, but Gamti, they have sort of the whole LPL season behind them. There is a lot of comfort here for this team. We'll see whether they can use that here to stay comfortable and really bring it to LD in this next match.
You have to feel with these lineups that both teams are opting into the late game to some degree. It was definitely the early to mid game pressure we saw from LD fall away in game 1, which opened up the Gamti victory, but was doubled down in game 2 that led to Legend Dragon taking it before all the scaling came through from Gamti. So I'm interested to see how this Legend Dragon lineup is navigated. Specifically, can Avoidless recreate the excellent mid lane pressure that prompted a 40 CS advantage that was never broken by Xiaohu in the matchup in mid?
And you have to think that the common denominator here could potentially be Avoidless on that Rek'Sai as well. I mean, we've spoken about the fact that she is just so powerful here in the early stages of the game. MLXG able to utilize her very, very strongly as well. And Avoidless seems to be no slouch in that department. Really played that first gank very, very well against Xiaohu in the mid, which just put him behind for the rest of the game. There was no way he could do anything after that point.
I mean, Huey is no slouch in terms of jungle pressure either, though. Is playing the Jarvan, who's largely fallen away on patch 5.6 with a couple of changes that came through, and just the fact that he probably prefers the Warrior, but can happily build the Cinderhulk as well. Do his best Loveland impression, because Loveland was building Juggernaut, or, I mean, Green Enchant, jungle Jarvan. Before it was cool. Love to pick up the tankiness on Jarvan. Not as much early damage, but still has the shred. The CC, though, Cassiopeia often has to overextend for damage in the mid lane if she wants to get those aggressive trades in. So Jarvan, an excellent champion to punish that.
Yeah, and Xiaohu able to do the same thing. Does have that polymorph available, can stop Parsa bit from doing anything at all in these fights. So we'll see how it goes. But ladies and gentlemen, let's get into Game 3. Let's hop onto the Rift. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen, Gamti taking on Legend Dragon. Game 3 here, 1-1. We are all tied up. A best-of-3 scenario breaking out now, and LPL team Gamti really not looking that strong in the last series, and we'll see whether LD can carry that through into this one. But very different comps coming down, and Tail had a great performance on Jinx in the first game. Let Me also on that Trundle. Of course, not so much early, but late game was fantastic. And Huey, there's a whole lot of comfort here for him on this Jarvan.
It looks like we're starting up with a very defensive fan. No aggressive invades for wards, as far as we can tell. In the first minute is definitely not a common occurrence in the LPL.
Yeah.
But in this third game seems to be the way forward. Gives us a bit of time to talk about Cassiopeia coming into the meta, Atlas. I mean, we've seen this in multiple regions, an increased priority on Cassiopeia, and you might wonder why, because Cassiopeia, excellent at single target damage, always struggled in team fights, as Let Me and Huey actually do clear out a ward, so early gold advantage goes to that duo. But Cassiopeia coming back into the meta, she's always had those strengths and weaknesses. Strong laning phase if she can overextend and just register that poison damage, get multiple Twin Fangs out. High damage potential in fights, but it's always been potential because the Petrifying Gaze, sometimes it goes massive, sometimes it's dodged. It's quite predictable in a lot of ways, has a cast time, so it doesn't always get value going. So you might ask, okay, why go for this high-risk, high-reward champion, the Cassiopeia? What does she provide? Let's go back about a month or so. Jugglemore was in full swing, Snake winning every game off the back of it. The big question was, what do you run in the mid lane with Jugglemore? Because you can happily run the Lulu in top, has a very low item threshold to relevancy. It was basically CDR boots into the Morellonomicon, 40% CDR, just to have all those abilities available all the time. So the mid lane, what do you run? We saw people run Zed in the mid lane with Jugglemore as a secondary threat. Didn't really seem to work. I really like Cassiopeia with any Protect the Hypercarry comp just because it makes her positioning in fights much easier to do. The big thing you can say is that Cassiopeia can fight next to the Hypercarry, and suddenly the Petrifying Gaze is a very reliable CC because someone needs to dive onto the Kog'Maw this game. The Kog'Maw needs to be assassinated at the back line of the fight, and if Cassio is just sitting next to him, throwing out the poison, throwing out the W, for example, everyone's getting poisoned trying to gap close onto the Kog'Maw you have to kill. Suddenly you have a high damage threat that actually has disengaged CC, much like a Morgana or a lower damage mid laner, but can throw in the damage to be a threat as well. So the introduction of Cassiopeia to Protect the Hypercarry comps, or even the true Jugglemore, I think is an excellent strategic step forward for this comp.
Well, we'll see how Parser can play it out in this lane. Of course, has missed quite a few those Noxious Blasts so far in this laning phase, but it is still definitely early days. You can see lane swap has come through here, instigated by Love. Ooh. Oh my goodness! Parser getting taken down very, very low. Both of these mid laners going to eat some cookies to try and get healthy again, and Xiaohu able to take control of this lane.
Look, if you ever try an auto-attack trade with a Lulu, not with any minions to block the passive, you actually take a surprising amount of damage. In early levels, avoidless though.
Yeah, he is coming around here. Flashes into the Unburrow as well. Xiaohu going to flash out of the way. There's a Flag and Drag from Huey. Let Me comes through. Xiaohu able to survive through the Igniters. Parser did flash out of the way as well. Xiaohu keeps his offensive summoner, so I guess that is a victory. Both of our mid laners low either in mana or in health. Is the Zap going to find Love Eat Potato, and Tail going to continue this push?
Almost definitely massively punished there with Legend Dragon. Trundle has to continue the jungle follow for longer than Maokai just because he doesn't have any ranged wave clear. He only has the Chomp to auto attack under turret. The freeze has been on in the top lane for a very long time. So all Trundle could hope to do was to try and get a bit of jungle follow down and some dragon pushing. You can see multiple members on top of the dragon. Means it's going to be a very early dragon for Gamti.
Yeah, Gamti able to lock this one down very early on in this game. Of course, are still behind just a little bit just based on some farm, but locking down that dragon, very important.
Really overextended.
With no flash. And there's a Morgana coming up as well as... Oh my goodness, the flash into the Dark Binding actually lands here as Let Me comes through. There's a Pillar of Ice. Parser going to get exhausted. Avoidless is around here, but first blood goes down to Huey. And that was, like you mentioned, bit of an overextension, but a really nice play from Gamti. That flash bind was beautiful.
But I think you have to wonder, okay, where is this Trundle? Where are they jungling? What are they probably doing? He would have seen the dragon kill register and still was a little bit slow to react to the multiple members that were going to be around the dragon side. They knew his flash was down. They punished him for it. An excellent early game rotation from Gamti.
Yep, Xiaohu able to clear out this mid lane as well. They'll get that to the turret as Cassiopeia makes her way back, and Xiaohu gets a free back here at this stage. Going to be able to answer the tier purchase from Parser, as he picked that one up. Does have the CS advantage here as well, and we'll see what Xiaohu is going to invest in this lane. Of course, Lulu, a bit more of a lane neutralizer rather than any sort of pressure there in the mid, so See what he goes for. It is going to be the Fiendish Codex, as Love Eat Potato is going to aggress onto Sync Dream here. Eats a Zap and a Dark Binding for it, though, and stands around that puddle for quite some time. Sync Dream getting a bit of damage down, but Love Eat Potato not at any risk of dying.
I mean, with that first blood gold, or the kill involvement regardless, Xiaohu had the choice of going the offensive option. Of course, Fiendish Codex builds into both Merlinomicon and Athene. Still going to be the cornerstone of the build, will be the 40% CDR. So going for the more offensive option, getting that extra bit of ability power to start to continue to harass Cassiopeia. Of course, we saw the level 2, level 3 trades going pretty damn decent for the Lulu. I think going for the more aggressive choice, probably a smart move.
Well, we'll see how it eventuates here as this game continues. Of course, the gold locked up at this stage. Maokai definitely having the better of this one as Trundle doesn't quite know where to go, as you mentioned before, but he's not dying. So that is a positive, Papa Smithy.
Sync Dream's passed his way to top, so it's going to have to be 2v1, although Jinx, Janna coming as well. So 2v2 action, the makeshift top lane of Trundle and Maokai, although finally, Kabe does push in this lane. Maybe we're going to see the lane swap down, but Janna's roamed up.
Yep, Tail does have a little bit of a CS advantage as far as how this lane swap has shaked out, but means absolutely nothing. A couple of creeps here as the back is going to come through. Kabe picks himself up that phage. Let Me finds a creep wave, finally.
It's taken him 6 minutes, so I mean, he's really happy to see it. Of course,
there's 3 lanes in this game, Papa Smith. There's a lot of abilities to get to creep waves.
He just couldn't get to any of the Trundle. Going to be later to that late game power spike, but so scary as we saw in game 1 will be Trundle the moment that he can get tankiness and that Ravenous Hydra, when he just becomes immovable and can smash down those structures. From the phage pickup, you could actually tell that Kabe wasn't going to look to rotate to the 2v2, just because if you're going for 2v2, you usually pick up a Sheen for a bit of trade damage, but the phage is more to reliably navigate the long laning phase, get that Rage passive up, and get the hell out of the way of Huey if he comes to gank.
Yeah, so able to stay a little bit more safe in these situations, doesn't want to play too aggressively, and like you mentioned, just heads back towards that top lane in this game. Sort of starting a lot more slowly than it did otherwise. Let Me is going to have to find somewhere else to farm now yet again as he's pushed out this top wave, but hasn't really found much more for it. Longsword sitting in his back pocket, wants to get to that Tiamat as quickly as he can, but it's getting difficult here as Living Artillery now available, level 6 to the level 4 of the top laner.
And awkwardly, he used the Pillar of Ice to actually push the minion wave, but the way he did it caused all the minions to navigate to the left, and they all aggroed the same creep and made the freeze worse. So
oh dear,
definitely didn't manage. We saw, I believe, Going almost managed to reset a freeze. Maybe actually it was Flandre reset a freeze.
It was Flandre, yeah, with
the Pillar of Ice, but awkwardly made it worse for himself.
Yeah, not happening here as a Voidless unable to get the Raptor away from Passer, as Xiaohu going to continue his clearing of this mid lane. Neither of our mid laners have headed back, and neither have changed that CS differential at all as the rocket into the back of the head of Love Eat Potato, but he's going to be fine. Petrifying Gaze now onto Huey as he aggresses on top. Takes a little bit of follow-up damage as well, but it's a nice ulti through from Passer to stop any aggression, and Ignite Flash now available yet again here for Cassiopeia, but no ultimate.
You have to think that ult gank, the use of the Cataclysm was to blow the Flash defensively from Passer. Only had to use his ultimate, though. Still has Flash available, so still consistent kill pressure onto Xiaohu, who's built up a small CS advantage in mid.
Yeah, we've got a Janna and a Voidless coming through here as well. A Voidless did have his Flash, could have gone for the aggressive play, but didn't decide to, as Huey is basically dead after taking his red buff. That looked very dangerous, but he is going to be able to back away safely.
Calculated.
Calculated, most definitely. Ooh, Xiaohu actually almost able to pick up a kill there in the mid lane. Flashed forward for it, I believe. Doesn't net himself anything. Glitterland's not going to find Passer as well. 300 health. A little bit difficult for Xiaohu to get through without the help picks there, and doesn't have the flash to close that distance. Southwind and a Voidless making their way back here at the same time, and Xiaohu is just going to take the long way around. He's going to be safe. Preyseeker going to find him. Of course, that Tremor Sense being able to spot him out quite nicely. Tail going to take down this bottom lane outer turret. And Ganti might be able to get the global gold advantage after picking up the early dragon at the same time. So much better early performance here from Ganti.
And Maokai does have the big CS advantage, but has lost his turret in this situation. Trundle's picking up farm where he can. Still quite a long way from the Tiamat. Still 700 gold away from finishing that item, I believe. But Maokai needs to find safe places to farm. This should all prompt, though, the swap back to bottom. Gamti have a very small window right now to kind of take their second dragon, but with their bot lane also shopping, probably not a clear advantage for either team in terms of the dragon.
Yeah, Voidless is hanging around here as well. Void Rush not quite off cooldown just yet, as Let Me with the teleport up in this top side. Has Subjugate, so that's important. Has managed to hit level 6 at least. But with the Catalyst almost completed here for Love Eat Potato, LD taking down this dragon very, very quickly. Of course, the poison from Cassiopeia, fantastic in that situation, and evening out the dragons, easy as you like here for LD.
It doesn't have a blue buff available, so used almost her whole mana bar to take down the dragon. That'll probably be worth it, but she's actually been losing mid lane trains to the Lulu as the Cassiopeia, and a low mana bar, probably just going to be go time for Xiaohu to start trying to actually zone away a Cassiopeia. I can count the amount of times I've said that an enemy champion can zone a Cassiopeia in mid on one hand, but Xiaohu might be able to do it.
Yeah, we'll see whether he does. Of course, has completed the Morellonomicon as Huey looking to take down the red buff, but now Xiaohu's getting down here as well. The double teleports coming through as the Gooderland's going to disengage. Love Eat Potato teleported down, but it was cancelled here by Let Me.
The bluff was actually the big victory for Let Me. He gets to farm for free. Maokai finds nothing on the teleport. Might actually force a lane swap. And Kog'Maw and Janna slowly walking to top, missing out on CS. Maokai actually going to get zoned regardless. That was a big advantage just from cancelling a teleport.
Yep. Beautiful play. 2,000 gold's now the lead here for Gamti as well. Sort of out of nowhere here. That being said, LD managed to pick up a free dragon, so they're rotating around this map nicely. This game, not too reminiscent of either of our first ones. Still very, very close.
Southwind doing really cute things in the top lane. Actually aggroing the minion wave herself was the Janna. Trying to restart the freeze in top. Freezing upon freezes with a Pillar of Ice. As the gank in mid, probably going to lead to nothing, although a Voidless.
Yeah, actually, there's the Cataclysm as well as a Voidless going down very, very low. Beautiful wild growth there to keep Huey alive, and Xiaohu picks up a Voidless passer. Now in a lot of trouble, but man, the consistent damage getting the one-for-one trade of the junglers here from that Cassiopeia was mammoth.
Yeah, the Cassiopeia, and remember, that's with a Negatron Cloak and a Tear. No damage items are built at all. Respecting Lulu's early game damage output enough to just go towards the Abyssal Scepter, you'd have to think, with that Negatron Cloak. Don't often see defensive builds coming out from a Cassio, but at least understanding that in those early trades, Pass has been losing out.
Yeah, really beautiful stuff. Xiaohu now with the Sorcerer's Shoes completed, not going for that cooldown reduction build that we often see.
Gamti actually steal away the blue buff. Critically, that's Cassiopeia's blue buff, who we've already mentioned has been at low mana values for the majority of this laning phase. We talked about in the previous game how Xiaohu was kept down by the blue buff monopolization of Legend Dragon, keeping Caston away from that blue. And Gamti are just doing a reverse this game and trying to keep Pasa down as much as possible on the much more aggressive Cassiopeia.
Yeah, they are trying to steal this one away. Of course, Pink Ward was spotted out here by a Voidless, and they're not going to be able to take this blue, which is going to reset. Huey clearing out some vision with his Raptor Sense. And Syncdream and Xiaohu just hanging around here, clearing out some vision at the same time. That's 4 members around the blue buff, and they stole the bottom side one, leaving Let Me there just to clear out these waves. Tiamat completed now as well. This is about the time where this Trundle able to answer a lot of what LD are able to offer and see whether Let Me can have the same impact this game as he did in the last.
Rek'Sai's actually spotted out by a ward, wants to try and punish Trundle, who only has the option to aggressively push now that he does AoE damage with the bite. They're going for the turret dive.
Yeah, they're looking for it here. Subjugated down immediately as there's the Pillar of Ice as well, a Voidless. Oh my goodness, Love Eat Potato. Oh, just breaks aggro. Super Mega Death Rocket comes through, but doesn't find the tree. When Pasa actually going to get polymorphed underneath this turret. Xiaohu dodging away from the turret auto attacks beautifully as well.
I think it's very poor judging of champion strength to try and dive a Trundle with ultimate, with Tiamat as Maokai and Rek'Sai. You just don't have the damage to do it. It's not even Warrior Rek'Sai, it's Cinderhulk Rek'Sai. The damage is just not there, and it seeds more jungle objectives. That's double buff stolen away by Gamti from Legend Dragon.
Yeah, and that's actually going to be the Petrifying Gaze here as Huey's going to flash out of his own Cataclysm to try and take down Pasa. Xiaohu does get kill credit for that one. Gamti, though, moving beautifully around this map. They've taken down the outer ring of turrets. And that was a steal away of a red buff there at the same time. A Voidless just doesn't have access to his jungle.
And 4 neutral buffs to 0 just means you can't even opt into fights or skirmishes because everyone's just relatively more powerful, even if the CS values don't necessarily show it. CS values in the advantage as well complicates things further for Legend Dragon. They just have to see more and more advantages. just from what has been poor pathing from a Voidless in particular, being punished for that over-aggressive turret dive without even the item build to really demand it. And yeah, I mean, everything in the jungle going Gamtee's way. They've equal in Dragons, all the buffs on the map, rotate and take the much more important outer turret in mid in exchange for that outer turret in bottom. Things looking good for Gamtee. 3 turrets to 1 up. Almost every metric superior than Legend Dragon.
Yeah, and not, you know, having a necessarily inferior late game team comp as well. Of course, the Protect the Jinx, very, very frightening in the later stages. And with this Trundle as well, as we know, Letme loves to relentlessly split push. We'll see whether he can make that one happen, because this Trundle, this is about the stage when Letme manages to find farm in interesting places and become just a massive beast. I believe he was about 100 CS in the lead at the end of the first game on that champion, and that was after, again, pretty difficult early stage.
I think that's an astute observation, Atlas, in that like in the late game, both of these are strong 5v5 fighting comps. In general, it's hard to pick the difference. It depends on the Cassio positioning. Southwind, though.
Yeah, he might be caught out here as the Monsoon's going to get popped. Huey just flags and drags his way in. Nice zap, going to do a lot of damage. Huey, though, now might find himself uncomfortable as the Chompers are going to come down, and that's going to serve as a nice escape path, as Gamtee now going to disengage from that one. But they get the Monsoon, and that's important.
It is important. They have control over Dragon, whether it's the pink ward or just the multiple members in position. Trundle and Lovey Potato both have their teleports. Double pink ward down.
Lovey Potato actually coming through as well as Xiaohu going aggressive. They're going to spot the fact that the Maokai is down here. Huey going to get spotted out inside this Dragon Pit. Going to actually aggro that one up as Lovey Potato going to go aggressive. Does use a Twisted Advance. There's the Cataclysm on the Passer, but Huey, he's going to fall down. The teleport a little bit late here from Letme as he tries to get into the fight. There's the Petrifying Gaze, but it's only onto Letme now, and you can see Xiaohu so much consistent damage with these rockets. Does net himself a kill, gets excited. The zap now onto Kabe, the perfect target to be locked down. Now tries to answer back as the double kill for Xiaohu. Tail a little bit too aggressive as Syncdream only just manages to get down the exhaust, and the triple kill for Xiaohu. The Quadra now as well. Is it the last auto attack? Xiaohu, is he going to land the Glitter Lance to earn himself the Quadra kill?
There's Whimsy.
There's the Whimsy, and he picks it up with the help picks. A Quadra kill for this Lulu.
Yeah, winning the laning phase, and now so much impact in the team fight. Cassiopeia, we talk about the lack of reliability on that Petrifying Gaze. Only one member, as you point out, needed to hold on to it longer. We saw the fact that they were able to hold on to cooldowns to hold down Tail at the end of the fight. Didn't hold on to the Petrifying Gaze, punished in the middle of the fight. And Lulu now has such a massive amount of gold, sitting quite happily on 1,600 gold on top of everything else.
Yeah, that is a beautiful amount of gold for a mid laner as well. We'll see whether he has another needlessly large rod in his inventory. Actually, probably just going to wait and pick up that death cap, and there it is.
That's a lot of early power, and it just empowers the front line as well. Of course, the wild growth scaling on OP means this Trundle going to be more effectively tanky. Only has a null magic mantle for defensive stats, but either the knock-up trio of whatever Huey's doing, of course, with the flag and drag into the Cataclysm, into now the wild growth, can punish the likes of Cassiopeia, do a lot of trade damage. Doesn't matter if you have an extra bound of health.
Yeah, and Letme just needs to find the target with the most magic resist, subjugate that one up, and then he's going to be tanky to all of Kabe's mid-game Cogmore damage, and of course the whole lot of consistent spells coming through from Passer, and he'll have a gigantic health pool as well.
I mean, literally, this whole lineup at this present point is magic damage coming through from Legend Dragon. As
Tail is experiencing a lot of magic damage then, as he's just going to fall down. Lovey Potato takes it with the Vengeful Maelstrom, and just out of position.
I mean, negligible physical damage from Rek's side, and more true damage than physical, you'd have to think, with that E ability into Cogmore doing mostly magic damage at this point in the game before Blade the Ruin King. Definitely itemizing magic is the right way forward, and Huey, the aggressive choice, as the Flash Soul Shackles.
Yeah, that came through. Syncdream now taking a lot of damage, but there's the knockups. Xiaohu's here at the same time. Wild Growth onto Southwind as Letme picks up the kill. That's his first hit for this Trundle, as a Cathian Surprise going to come through, not get anything. Double kill for Letme is terrifying. 2-0-4 for the Trundle. He's starting to get huge. Voidless trying to answer with the outer turret here in the mid lane. Bottom lane's getting pushed in from Lovey Potato as well. No teleports are going to be here, but the inner turret is going to be the answer from Gamtee in this top side of the map.
They have a lot of DPS, and Letme, they want to pick the Cassio.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, Xiaohu with a beautiful fadeaway avoids the stun, and the flash comes through from Passer. Huey coming over saying, oh, you guys call for something, but no, not going to be needed as Pasa did disengage from that one. Inner turret going to fall down. Super Mega Death Rocket from downtown, and Tail locks down the kill and a Voidless. There's the Glitter Lance. That was stunning from Tail. Just knew exactly where the back was going to come through. That's the second kill for the Jinx.
And Xiaohu really putting the best foot forward on this mid Lulu. I even said I prefer him on carries, but clearly they've been practicing this strategy so much better executed today than it was back in the LPL. And when you're this far ahead on Lulu, the scary thing, we talk about her damage falling off. You can get a snowball Lich Bang at this point. You are doing massive damage during these fights, especially as there's no magic resist being itemized for just yet.
Yeah, did you see that red buff get very, very confused? He was trying to crawl into a hole in the side of that den. Very, very strange. Tail, so scary now on this Jinx that even red buff doesn't want to go anywhere near him. Carbe just trying to farm up. Is behind about 30 CS. Does have the Trinity Force though, so doing decent amounts of damage. The Aegis now completed by a Voidless, who's going to Void Rush his way towards this bottom side. And that's a little bit confusing. He's going to be Huey now picking up a Hex Drinker and an Aegis of the Legion as well. He has definitely identified that there is not a whole lot of physical damage that he needs to contend with at this stage of the game. He goes for the
selfish snowball choice of the Hex Drinker, complements that with the team choice of the Aegis. The best of both worlds, you'd have to say, to go with the Cinderhulk Jarvan build. So it gets a bit of the damage back from the Warrior enchant that he didn't pick up this game. Before we saw this action, the unique thing about these two comps is that even though they're both about peeling for the AD carry, Gamti have the advantage because they have this strategic option of the let me split push that won them game one. There's no answer for the let me split push on LD's side. So with even win conditions, with the gold lead and kind of this extra strategy of just having let me just have his way with the base, take multiple inhibitors like he could in game one, the pressure's on LD. They're actually the team that needs to build up the gold lead because having a flexible amount of win conditions that have already proven in this series to be successful gives Gamti just the bigger playbook. They're less predictable, and Legend Dragon, they're all now about pulling this game into late and trying to win what will be very complicated, very mechanically intensive late game fights.
And LD actually wondering about on top of a ward here. You would have expected them to actually sweep that brush, but not going to come through, and Gamti finally going to have their vision removed.
And all of this is to buy time for Maokai, of all people, to split push. Certainly no Trundle in that regard, and just is able to push in a minion wave that won't be gobbled up, and he might actually die here. Sync Dream and plenty of reinforcements, including the Lulu, are on the way.
Yeah, there's actually the Soul Shackles as well after the Twisted Advance. He's going to be able to lock down the stun as he doesn't find the Dark Binding, but there's a puddle, and Xiaohu with a whole lot of damage. Tail's going to get gifted himself a kill. No, he's not. Sync Dream, of course, takes that one away.
Fine. I mean, not a big deal in this particular regard. The Morgana already has the Mikhails as a defensive option. That extra goal might actually help towards the Zhonya's of some degree. Make her a possible diver of the backline. You're holding onto that Monsoon if you're Janna to keep away Trundle, to keep away the Jarvan. Having to keep it away from the Morgana as well. That's not the ideal thing for a Janna.
Yeah, Pasa, though, is going to get the Petrifying Gaze off Super Mega Death Rocket to steal away that kill, netting another one over to Tail. He was upset about not picking up that kill earlier as a Voidless. Being exactly as his name stated here, he's going to Void Rush towards that mid lane to try and protect that one as Kog'Maw going to take down the outer turret in the top lane. Bottom lane inner, though, and Gamti, they're back to their rotational selves, taking away these turrets when they're gifted them.
Exactly, and Gamti are punishing every trade with two of their own. Take out an inner turret, take out two inner turrets in this particular trade. The gold lead just gets bigger and bigger. It's almost 10,000 gold at 23 minutes with similar comps and more flexibility, as we mentioned. LD need a miracle.
Yeah, and do you know what's mental as well is Gamti, that kill just before was the first one that Xiaohu hadn't had an input in. And we were talking about the fact that Xiaohu had a horror performance last game on the Kassadin. Gamti, you have to think a lot of how they play revolves around this mid laner.
Whenever a Lulu wins lane, that's the reality. If she's able to have kill pressure herself, she's got the whimsy. She's so good at roaming around the map. She has the Wild Growth shield. She gets kill involvement in basically every kill that comes through, balancing offense with defense in terms of her AP scaling. And that's it's just like when Twisted Fate gets kill pressure on his enemy. You know that everyone else will pay for that reality. Xiaohu's making the same case for Lulu.
Yeah, he certainly is. Frozen Heart, though, is completed by Let Me. 30% CDR and the Ravenous Hydra. So much turret damage to come through with this chomp as Kabe going to trick that Raptor into running around a little bit as he takes that one down. Tail going to continue the farm fest. He hasn't been back to buy in a little while. We'll see whether he goes for the Bloodthirst or whether it is going to be the Last Whisper. Looks like he's looking for a little bit more cash, so not happy with the BF Sword. Probably wants to be able to shred through some of the armor coming through on the side of Love 8 Potato. Yeah,
about 300 gold away from the Last Whispers. That's a very possible pick. I could just go for the BF Sword if that fits the item path better. Just looking down the lineup, there isn't a big armor stack just yet, but a lot of players do like to future-proof themselves a bit. If they don't feel like they're being punished enough, they don't need the lifesteal in particular, the Last Whisper is a fine purchase. Yeah,
Voidless actually going to get spotted out here, but there are a lot of members of LD around as the Black Shield is going to stop Huey from getting knocked up. In fact, just avoids the Howling Gale. No worries there at all. Sing Dream going to get slowed down by a sapling, but LD, they're just not looking like they want to pick a fight, and it makes sense. 9,000 gold behind. It's looking dangerous. 3 dragons to 1 as well as it's just Gamti. It's like they're playing the same game here. Like the same win conditions, but Gamti are just doing it so much better.
And Gamti, they have this realization that Cassiopeia, if she tries to pick up any farm in the mid lane, is an easy gank target for Jarvan in particular. The Cataclysm, every time her flash is down, on a much shorter cooldown than flash, of course, means wraparound ganks onto the Cassiopeia. And the only way Legend Dragon can kind of respect that and actually navigate around it is to group up as 5. But that just opens up the other win condition of Trundle split pushing away happily. They just have no good options, and all they're doing at this point is watching their jungle being cleared. Baron control just becomes a stranglehold for the Gamti side. They're going to eventually rotate and pick up that objective as well. That extra win condition now is coming out chumps because all Legend Dragon can do is group up the Kog'Maw and the Cassio, ensure that they have massive damage, whichever target you look to pick. But that means free time for Trundle.
Yep, and they trade Cataclysm for Flash there as well. Voidless having to get out of that one. Southwind going to get zapped down. Look at the Super Mega Death Rocket coming through. That Mikhail's was entirely necessary to save Southwind's life. And goodness gracious, that was almost a pick from a whole lot of setup CC that came through. Unable to quite close the distance. Is Gamti going to use that as an opportunity to go for this Baron? They get spotted out. Voidless, of course, Tremor Sense going to help him knowing exactly what's going on regardless. Is just hanging out here. We'll see whether anything is going to happen as LD looking to group up. Trundle in the bottom side. Of course, Maokai there as well. In fact, the teleport unable to be used as Let Me, I think, managed to knock him out of it with a pillar.
Yeah, the pillar, I believe, does have that small interrupt. So it was enough to cancel the teleport. They're going to keep onto this Baron Gamti. A lot of Baron damage. Huey very, very tanky. Not a lot of good options for LD. If they all in this jungle, they're going to face a really strong Gamti line, and they have their teleport of their own.
Yeah, Let Me actually coming towards this Baron here as well. It's going to get chomped down very, very quickly. Lovey Potato making his way over, but he's not going to be there in time. Voidless goes for the 50-50, but no, Yui locks it down this time, and Voidless going to die as Tail picks up that kill. It was good to go for it, but unable to quite get there. Just smote a little bit too early.
A 2-level advantage for Jarvan just means that you're speculative at best if you're the Rek'Sai. Rek'Sai being behind a Jarvan is awkward in itself, just given how Rek'Sai as a kit, she has the ability to balance farming with ganking. She has all the different tools to get ahead in the mid game. It just didn't happen. It's one game to the next.
Yeah.
Voidless with a massive performance in game 2, but found wanting in game 3.
Yeah, and Huey just able to make more of his presence known around this map, and we've seen his Jarvan be fantastic before, and he's still able to use it to such great effect, much like we saw Insect do yesterday.
And Lulu's just so damn strong, Atlas.
So
you look at the gold values. At this point, 3,000 gold ahead of the Cassiopeia, who really only has damage and 1 peel spell in her ultimate compared to, I mean, at this point, burst damage advantage and the utility advantage for Lulu. Only the sustained damage to a single target is there for Cassia, and she eats a Binding.
Yeah, Binding going to come through. There's the Super Mega Death Rock as well, just for some extra damage. Petrifying Gaze came through, but didn't find anything as Baron up creeps now knocking on the front door of LD. That's the Binding to land on a Lovey Potato, but Chompers as well, not going to do too much. Howling Gale going to knock up multiple members yet again, annoying this Gamti lineup as Kabe from the top side just trying to get some farm and stop any potential split push from being rotated into. And Gamti, now they're just going to protect their siege minion.
Actually, there's no damage taken down. Oh, able to do that with a fully charged Howling Gale. And I believe a Prey Seeker sniping it away. is just going to return those. Plenty of Baron buff. Still 50% on this Baron buff for Gumty.
Yeah, let me actually whimsied up here as well as the Voidless trying to come in for something, and the Chompers are down. Lovey Potato taking a whole lot of damage there in the front line, but tanking up a lot there as well. Flashes out of the way. The members of LD very, very low, but Gumty keeping themselves healthy, and this inhibitor turret, it's going to fall down. No one dies, but the pressure is on as Huey looks to go aggressive. Carbe completely out of mana, and that inhibitor goes down without any deaths, which is quite interesting.
The minion waves pushing out for LD will just be gobbled up by Gumty when they rotate around. Pings onto Dragon. That'll be the 4th Dragon. Don't think they need another win condition, but they're going to establish one right here.
Yeah, they certainly are. And 12,500 gold has been picked up for Gumty as far as the lead is concerned. 7 turrets to 3. Looking a lot more similar to the first game than the second game here, and LD must be getting worried. But, of course, it is a best of 5, ladies and gentlemen. Gumty need to win another 2 more. LD will have some more opportunities to fight back, even if they don't take this game. But we'll see whether they can make something happen moving forward. It's just going to be so hard, of course. When Tails on Jinx, the snowball queen herself, and Zhao, who is just this strong and playing this well, it's going to be very difficult.
With balanced team comps and an extra win condition, I can't see Gumty losing this game. Even if they have a bad skirmish, just send Let Me to go get 2 inhibitors like he managed in game 1. He's already shown a prowess for their backdoor in that particular game. They're just getting minions wherever they can. They're trying to hit bigger and bigger item timings, but when you're 12,000 gold behind, you're just never going to be able to outtrade this Jinx, who's going to move towards 4 items. Going to be actually the Blade of the Ruined King. Just kill Maokai in particular that much faster at the start of the fight. Get that Get Excited proc and just kill everyone else.
Yeah, Blade of the Ruined King Jinx, that is very interesting, of course. Whole lot of extra mobility if you do use it while you're excited, but having the ability to keep yourself up in these fights at the same time as having the Mikhails there onto Sync Dream, it's going to be hard to kill this Jinx and take her out of the fight.
And look, both Rek'Sai and Maokai are going to get in melee range. Very tanky, but not a lot of consistent damage. It's all about the first kill for Jinx. That's kind of the reality of late game Jinx. You get enough items, get the first kill, and the mobility from your passive is the big thing that lets you smash down the backline. Of course, the 750 ranged AoE splash damage on crits helps, but mobility and range is the kind of the big thing that comes through. It's why Juggermore is so popular. Throwing the Whimsy on a Cogmore, suddenly you have mobility and massive range and damage coming through from the Cogmore. Jinx gets that herself. She's the selfish version of Cogmore. Can really get it going and just needs her team to open up that first kill. Looking more and more likely the more damage items she gets.
Yeah, they're looking for it here as Gumty now stacking up towards this top side. They have the minion wave. No Baron buff, though, as Letme's going to continue the split push almost with the teleport available. That is up here for Love Eat Potato, but he has nowhere to teleport to. Because they are relegated to just protecting their base. Miasma there from Parsa, able to come through with a fair bit of wave clear here, especially coming out of this Cassiopeia. So that is something to put down for LD, but otherwise Gumty wave clear in spades with the rockets, the glitter lance, and Carbe walked through that, which is interesting. But he is going to be okay.
An interesting interaction between those abilities sometime. They're just happy to keep this push going. The split's going. A minute 50 to Baron. LD haven't been in the range of the Baron for a good few minutes at this point. Have some wards down, but those will time out very, very soon. Trundle's just waiting for someone other than Cogmore to be protecting this turret, and he'll be able to shrug off the damage and just solo it down himself and just, again, return to the form of Game 1. The Trundle undoes a lot of what Legend Dragon are looking to do, and their base is broken, so it's just not looking good for Legend Dragon. Gumty pulling it out a little bit. Definitely not looking for the fast finish, but the Blade's now finished on Jinx. That damage just got higher.
Yeah, it did, which is just ridiculous. We'll see whether he goes for a defensive item or whether more lifesteal is going to be the defensive choice that he's going to pick up instead. Of course, Bloodthirster could be taken, but Tail probably wants to be able to solidify a victory by staying alive in some of these fights because, man, right now, probably going to be A-okay. Oh, Dark Binding going to uncharacteristically miss there by Sync Dream. As the Voidless came through, but all's quiet so far. They're just waiting for this Baron. 50 seconds until that one comes back up. This inhibitor actually going to be up again relatively soon as well. Dark Binding not going to find a Voidless, who's managing to actually avoid the Dark Binding, so that's a little bit frustrating.
And everything's just quiet. Gumty could look to overforce. They could go for a tower dive. They have a tanky front line, but there's no impetus to. The Baron's coming up in 25 seconds. The minion waves are in good spots. Trundle's split pushing, getting stronger and stronger towards 3-4 items, the defensive items to complement the Ravenous Hydra that he's already completed.
Yeah.
There's just no impetus to do anything overly aggressive. The only way they can lose is to really start throwing shutdowns and bonus gold onto the likes of Kabe and Pasa. And they spent a whole game navigating around those threats. The Cassio never got going, repeatedly ganked, punished for a lack of mobility in the mid. And Kog'Maw 0-2 and 2 just had no score involvements, no team fights to be won for LD, but we might see one here.
Yeah, there's the Flash Cataclysm as well. Pasa tries to use the ultimate, but doesn't know exactly which way to face as Lemmy's going to get exhausted there in the backline. Tail free hitting as well as the life bars of LD are getting destroyed. They're falling one after the other here as Xiaohu just able to do whatever he wants. Pasa goes down very late in the fight, but man, what a whitewash. The quadra kill for Tail. They're going to be able to push this one through for a victory. Gamti pull the trigger and take down the game.
Absolutely. They finally get the pick they want. No coincidence that's Huey, whose jungle path in this game was wonderful and a sight to behold. Snowball Xiaohu. We always say that Snowball Xiaohu is the way forward. Even on Lulu, he makes it look good.
Oh, yeah.
7-0 and 11. 18 out of 19 kill participation. And Gamti, they might have been dropping after that second game. They picked themselves up with a very impressive Game 3.
Yeah, and we saw what happens to this Trundle if you don't keep him down early. 2-0 and 11 as well, and he didn't get any farm at the beginning of that game. 70 CS up at the end. And it has a lot to do with the fact that that mid lane went so well for Gamti, but man, they looked a lot better that game, and now they have an opportunity to close this one out. Set point here for Gamti.
It's the mirror matchup between Trundle and Maokai. Maokai's naturally going to build those resist. Trundle subjugates, wins the 1v1 in the off lane. Suddenly you can't do too much if you're Maokai. The split pusher we've already established well in the advantage of Trundle. Just good play and good comping by Gamti.
Yeah, really nicely done. But ladies and gentlemen, this is a best of 5. There is still potentially another 2 more games if LD manage to get back in this one. But Gamti, we'll see whether they can follow through. We're going to have a short break, but we'll see you right afterwards. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our English coverage of the Chinese LPL Promotion Series. I'm Atlas, this is Papa Smithy, and we might be in for our last game unless LD can do the same thing that they did last time, that they had the blue side. Of course, Gamti now up 2-1.
It's strange that I believe this whole series has gone on the blue side of all things. The first pick obviously coming up trumps the last series. The Lulu was very, very powerful. Probably going to be banned or taken away by Legend Dragon, you'd have to think. Will it be the return to the Juggernaut? That's been their recent comfort. The return to meta picks by Gamti in general, surprisingly, has netted them a lot of results. In the past 3 to 4 weeks of the LPL, it was playing those crazy champions, the off-meta picks like the Aurelia mid, like the Lucian mid, that were really the few victories that Gamti were able to pick up. Remember, this is the 11th placed LPL team against, I believe, the 4th placed LSBL team. Legend Dragon, one very impressive performance. The first game also started strong. They're going to have to start strong again if they want to stave off defeat, because, of course, Gamti one win away from a semi-final promotion tournament game against the winners of yesterday, Starhorn Royal Club.
Yeah, of course, Starhorn Royal Club, definitely a formidable opponent coming through here, but Gamti, they need to get there first. They are one win away. We'll see whether they can do it. Of course, Legend Dragon, they've shown they can get the early picks and make things happen.
Be interesting to see what the priority picks are. Is it picking away the Lulu? Is it just going for the Rek'Sai once again? Definitely night and day in terms of Rek'Sai performances for Avoidless. Was wonderfully on point in Game 2. Snowball in the mid lane, Pasa in particular, struggled very much in Game 3. What they're going to tend towards, maybe it'll be something new from Legend Dragon. They've stuck to the meta mostly. Mixed success.
Mixed success, most definitely. Gamti, though, looking to change up these bans. Is Kalista going to hit the bench first for LD, but it's going to be the first ban, Sivir, on the side of Gamti. And after taking that one away, you have to think that LD have looked a little bit less comfortable, and we'll see whether Gamti, they're going to be the ones to take away either that Lulu or the LeBlanc here for the mid lane.
The top lane champion was another one to discuss. The teleport smite went away with it completely in Game 3. Was the Maokai vs Trundle matchup. No smites needed whatsoever. I mean, top lane's probably the big champion pool that's been impacted by bans. Hecarim bans and Shyvana bans have come out in recent series. Both those champions available, not picked up. Where did Legend Dragon go with this last one? They actually banned the Lulu on blue. So despite Lulu being such a beautiful flex pick, probably the ideal first pick in a draft, just because she has 3 viable places to go in terms of lanes, banned away.
And are Gamti going to stick to maybe that Vladimir ban away here? But I would suggest getting rid of that LeBlanc, because Pasa was so much more comfortable on that champion than anything else that we've seen thus far. We'll see whether that is going to be the option here. Of course, Xiaohu might want to just prove himself with a different option, but they've only got 4 seconds here. Let me go to make the decision. It is going to be LeBlanc hitting the bench, and LD now have the opportunity to take that first pick. And Rek'Sai's available, Janna's available, Sejuani, another huge power pick going to be available as well, and Avoidless has played a heck of a lot of that recently, and the first game here in the promotion tournament so far, we're going to see him on that Sejuani. We'll see how he performs here as Gamti now going to answer with a couple of picks of their own. Huey going again for the early pressure, and against Sejuani, this is a much better option because he's going to have a monopoly over the early jungling phase.
I mean, the skirmishing, level 2, level 3, definitely going to be in the advantage of Huey. Vladimir is the one interesting champion that's made it through the picks and bans so far. Has been a very contested early pick. People are happy to throw that in the mid lane especially. Look at the prominence of Jinx though. Jinx has been on the winning side, I believe, 100% of the times today. Was a contested pick in previous series. The return to Gragas. You see engage from LD in their first pick. You go for the ultimate disengage support in Gragas.
Yeah, and we'll see what LD do. This is the first time that they've been able to answer this Jinx pick with another option. Well, unless it was the Kog'Maw actually picked into it last time around, but Avoidless is going to hover over this Thresh, and Kabe looking to go to that 100% win rate in one game, Graves, that he did manage to put through before. And it's a terrifying burst lane here, especially if that death sentence lands, because the amount of follow-up from a Graves is insane.
And the first level, for 6 levels, going to be squarely in the advantage of the Graves Thresh lane. Instant kill pressure, even after level 6. The collateral damage basically functions as that much shorter range but instant cast super mega death rocket. So there's a lot of damage in the laning phase. Probably already looks like Gamti might need to navigate a lane swap just to deal with this 2v2 matchup they've opted into. Vladimir, as we mentioned, surprising to see him fall to the 4th round of picks after so much prominence in the bans.
Goodness. And I love this Sync Dream. Back over to the Leona. We'll see whether it does get locked in. It is a scary lane. Of course, the Chompers allow sort of the Shield of Daybreak stun to feel like it goes on forever. It is going to be locked away here. And Sync Dream back to his Leona days. And we'll see whether this means that as soon as he hits level 2, he just bails out of the lane.
It's a very interesting comp being put together from Gamti. You might think that all these abilities might be used in one fell swoop. For example, initiating with the Explosive Cask, Hemaplague on top, and then the amazing Solar Flare coming through from Leona. But I actually like what they've done just because Legend Dragon are always going to be looking to initiate. They're the ones with the Sejuani. They're going to throw out the Glacial Prison. I feel like Gamti should fight in 2 phases. After the Glacial Prison thrown out, use the Explosive Cast for disengage, then re-engage with the Hemoplague into the Solar Flare for a massive secondary burst of damage. But Legend Dragon, they're definitely looking for the big team fight. Sejuani older with the Gnar coming through, and then Karthus doing his best to die on top of all the members of Gamti.
Yeah, well, we've seen this matchup time and time again. If it is going to be a mid-lane Vladimir here, but it may not. It might be Let Me taking that to the top, as Sync Dream's hovering over some interesting choices. And how do you feel about sort of an 80 carry mid like Lucian or Ezreal into the Karthus?
Very painful for Karthus, the laning phase, but Vladimir already has a strong laning phase against Karthus.
Yeah.
They already had Legend Dragon opt into a poor laning matchup. I mean, the Lucian will definitely smash Karthus in lane. That's just the reality of the Lucian pick coming through, and they're going to lock it in. My favorite of the off-meta picks is this Lucian mid from Xiaohu. It's an adjustment of his Ezreal mid. You saw them considering the Ezreal, but of course, Lucian can push the wave much better with the piercing light, has a lot more lane control, and plenty of kill pressure on this Karthus.
But, I mean, LD's team comp still looks fantastic. So much AoE damage and AoE CC here as well, what with the Glacial Prison and the Gnar. If both of these teams are going to go head-to-head in a team fight situation, we could have a really explosive one on our hands.
And that's the kind of the weird thing about this Vladimir pickup is that both the Explosive Cask and now the Solar Flare are probably going to have to be used defensively. Why would you opt into a team fight with low base health members like the Lucian, like the double 80 carry lineup they have against a Karthus comp? It looks like teamfight is definitely going to be at a premium for Gamti. They're going to try and rotate down, take a lot of structures because Gnar, Sejuani, Karthus, crazy teamfight from LD.
Yeah, and crazy sort of just, I want to get in your face. They press all of their ultimates and things will just tend to work. I mean, locking down a whole team in order to gnar them into a wall is a terrifying prospect, and that could be something that happens this game. We're going to go over the lineups, of course, finishing off with Sync Dream versus Southwind, the Leona versus Thresh, a matchup of old here considered somewhat interesting for Leona in the early few levels, but as soon as that Solar Flare comes in a 2v2 situation, you just can ult that one away. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to waste no time. Let's get onto the Rift. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen, Gamty trying to close out the 3-1 victory against LD, who are fighting for their right to get into the LPL. Both of these teams wanting to face Starhorn Royal Club in the semi-final of this particular tournament. And Gamty now all together, grouping forward. See whether they can pick up anything in this early stage of the game. Of course, a lot of damage in the early phases. And having a Leona, that Shield of Daybreak is brilliant level 1.
It's a defensive, not a defensive fan, it's a defensive grouping, looking for maybe a late invade onto the Legend Dragon blue buff coming through. This Gamty lineup is execution heavy to a fault almost, in my opinion. We've said that about a couple of comps we've seen tonight. The issue with Gamty is that if they're able to rotate around, if they get a turret lead, they have a crazy strong siege comp and excellent disengage. But if they ever have their outer ring of turrets taken first, if ever there's a position where a Voidless, is looking for a flank, for example, if we see the aggressive wards coming through from those outer turrets being down into potentially the flank or just having to respect the initiation potential of the Thresh or the pick potential of Voidless on this Sejuani, defensively, Gamty will definitely fall apart. It's a situation where, you know, enough of those tanky members get to this backline, they'll die instantly. So if Gamty get a lead, this is an excellent team comp, but there's so many points of failure to this massively strong team fight comp that LD have put together.
Yeah, and LD looking to definitely go into standard lanes here with the Graves and Thresh, but not going to be opted into any sort of lane swap Gamty. And I would have liked it if they would, mostly because it gives Syncdream the option to move around the map without Tail falling horribly behind.
That's a good point. Both of these supports have excellent roaming capabilities, the Thresh and the Leona, with excellent CC at early levels. I also don't really like the Vladimir versus Gnar matchup. Even though they're both resourceless champions, it's very easy to proc multiple hypers onto a Vladimir before his sustain really gets high in the later levels or when Hex Check Revolver is completed. And it's also very predictable to hit the boomerang after the pull comes through. You can often hit that either in the first hit or in the return hit and just chase down the Vladimir in a long lane. You have to play this lane so defensively if you're the Vladimir, because you're ever overextended. There's actually significant kill pressure on the Gnar.
Speaking of significant kill pressure, there's the Chompers coming through second here for Tail, immediately getting exhausted as Syncdream. He might even take a turret shot here, but Kabe so incredibly low. The Voidless actually facing off against Xiaohu here as he does pop that W. Relentless Pursuit going to get him to safety. LD in a bit of trouble here on the bottom side, and the gank early not working out here for a Voidless.
No heal actually on Xiaohu, gone for the cleanse. So much respect to Sejuani potentially camping this mid lane. Heal does a lot more work against the Requiem, you have to say, so might be punished for that. Might only be even trades, but I take 1-for-1 trades if I'm the Karthus. I have that massive late game power spike and will always be relevant with the Requiem.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Death Defy just makes you such a good pick here as Xiaohu able to get that Light Slinger onto Passer as well. Definitely relevant damage here as he's staying ahead in the farm, but nice harass to come through from these single target lay wastes as there's a Relentless Pursuit forward. Xiaohu playing uncharacteristically aggressive, nets him a lot of avoidance on these lay wastes.
He has a lot of potential for wave control, but it's so hard to deny CS from a Karthus just because there's so much range on that lay waste. 825 range compared to, for example, the 500 range auto attack coming through from Lucian. Can register excellent damage trades. There's only so much sustain available when you go that Doran Ring start on Karthus. I just want to try and bully him out of lane. As Huey almost getting bullied out of the jungle. In fact, he dies.
Yeah, dies to the Krugs. We've seen this before, ladies and gentlemen. Krugs, a worthy adversary here in the jungle. Haven't seen Gragas fall down to them as of yet, especially not with a potion in his inventory, but Trailblazer has been completed. Eclipse going to proc here from Syncdream as he's just trying to put pressure on, and Kabe, after that first trade, very unable to do very much in this lane as 5 CS is the differential in a lane that he probably should be winning. Syncdream, Zenith Blade not going to find the mark as he's just trying to zone away the members of LD. Nice lane presence here so far for Syncdream.
The early laning phase should go to LD's advantage. Of course, the level 2 being pinged on the all-in trade, really keeping Graves behind in this lane. Thresh just has more flexible options than Leona in lane, has the ranged auto attack to harass, has the Flay, which you usually pick up at level 1, sometimes level 2, to disengage the Zenith Blade. But the first trades have been going in really good for SingDream. He's going in again.
Yeah, there's the flash. Immediately baits out the flash from Kabe as well. Of course, Tail holds on to all of his summoners. SingDream loses his. Xiaohu in trouble. The exhaust to come through. A Voidless trying to get down. Huey here for the save, but Xiaohu very, very low. The last lane waits. Oh my goodness, Pasa, is he going to fall? He does. Xiaohu has to dodge it and doesn't manage to. It's the 1-for-1, but the kill goes to Huey and Pasa, which is definitely in favor of LD.
Yeah, well spotted out. Excellent kill credit score for LD. They'll take that trade happily. No Requiem needs to be used. No Requiem available, of course. Cleanse still available from Xiaohu. If he had had heal, he would have survived that trade.
He would have, but of course, no Glacial Prison to worry about just yet. And we'll see whether that cleanse does help out towards the later stages of this game. Xiaohu able to pick up a pickaxe and a longsword here. We'll see what he decides to build up. It looks like it might be an Infinity Edge earlier on, but with that longsword, might be looking to go for some sort of cutlass, maybe a brutalizer even.
And Pasa showing a lot of respect to the trading coming through from the Lucian. Remember in the previous game, it was the Rylai's build. SingDream again. Yep,
going in. Does take a turret shot, though, as the Eclipse is going to proc off very soon, losing a whole lot of those defensive statistics. Kabe might have overextended, though, of course, doesn't have his flash. There's a flash forward from Tail. The last auto attack, and he gets excited. Let Me's down here as well. Love Eat Potato trying to get in. He takes down SingDream, just sort of confusingly, as Southwind is going to die to the Hemo Plague. Let Me just hangs around the minion wave and lets his AD carry die as a double kill comes through here for Love Eat Potato. And Let Me's most definitely dead. The ultimate is going to whiff, and the pull does go off. Love Eat Potato taking a whole lot of creeps, but he's not going to die. And man, LD, they answer back beautifully there.
And that was the interaction I was talking about. Whenever Vlad is overextended compared to Anar, you're just going to need auto attack, alpha auto attack, not enough sustain to get through the trades. The CC comes through, even with the boomerang toss. So easy to hit because, you know, the exit from the pull is predictable. Even if you miss the first proc, the return of the boomerang will be just enough. And that's now a massively fed Naris Pasa, taking a lot of damage in mid. You can see why he went Catalyst over potentially the tier.
Yeah, and Xiaohu actually a little bit annoyed at the fact that there were some caster minions there to block away that culling, which could have done a whole lot of extra damage to Pasa, who didn't have any of his summoner spells. SingDream, yep, beautiful play there from Southwind, demonstrating exactly why Leona's a difficult champion to play into Thresh.
Especially early levels becomes harder. When the Solar Flare is available, it's a bit different. You just register the guaranteed CC, then dive in there with the Solar Flare. But so with the what's the E again? You can tell me.
Oh, the Zenith Blade?
The Zenith Blade. But in this situation, just has to back away. The lane's been going very well for Jinx, but Graves actually got back a bit of a CS lead here.
Yeah, managed to get back to lane a little bit earlier. Of course, dying does help you get back to the fountain quite quickly.
Easy to shop.
Yep, very easy to shop. You get a whole lot of time, you know. You can just settle down. You can say, okay, can't shop for the next little while. Oh, Cannon Creep actually gets zoned away here as SingDream takes a massive ride into Tabe as well as Tail now taking a lot of damage. Southwind here trying to zone away the Jinx. He might die for it, though. The Ignite's down. They're just going for the Thresh, who's going to burn to death. Tail picks up the kill. Requiem comes down. The zaps there. Requiem not enough, and Tail picks up a double in the bottom lane, and that is cataclysmic for LD.
And it was just really poor communication between Southwind and Kabe. I assume they were baiting for a potential collateral damage level 6 power-up. He wasn't even close to level 6, didn't pick it up. Double hill kill comes through, and without that collateral damage, even factoring in the Requiem, they were never going to get a favorable trade there, were LD.
Yeah, and Dragon goes down off the back of it here as well. Gamti managed to pick up the first one there. They trade it for their Raptor camp as a Voidless is able to counter jungle that one, but probably not worthwhile here for LD. As the gold lead, nothing to speak of, but Xiaohu able to farm up nicely here in the mid, but hasn't been used quite as the, I guess, counter pick that we were thinking about.
And the kill distribution, pretty much ideal for Gamti. 3-1 now is the Jinx compared to the 3-0 Love Eat Potato. Now if he gets the big fang, can instantly kill Tail. It'll negate that gold lead that Tail's managed to bring up, but that's a best case scenario. Regularly you're going to take Tail picking up damage, just being that much better at tank busting.
Yeah, and Let Me still going to be relevant in that later stage of the game as well. Has that revolver in order to heal himself back up as Xiaohu going to continue farming out this mid lane. He's going to dodge away from some Skittles as well as Pasa probably just wants to pick up some farm.
It's evolved into a farm lane for Karthus, which he just is happy to opt into. We're waiting to see if they can build up this objective lead here, Gamti, with their double AD. Soon they'll hit one-item power spikes. The Infinity Edge completed for Tail is going to mean just so much turret taking pressure with the minigun form. Xiaohu's going to be able to spam out those spells with blue buff and also have a lot of turret taking pressure. But that's the onus is on Gamti to take this game early. 400 gold lead, a kill up, not a lot to speak about. But if they don't get that objective lead, I mean, there's just so many options for LD to win a fight.
Yeah, Xiaohu actually going very far underneath that turret as well, tanking up a few shots, able to use that Doran's Blade to keep himself a little bit healthy, but getting a little bit overexcited. Huey comes round though, so he is going to be safe here in the mid lane as Pasa able to use those Skittles to kill out some wave, and Xiaohu going to head back to base now as well, pick up some more items. We'll see what he decides to go for. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a Brutalizer for some early pressure, some early armor penetration. Of course, no arm guard completed here for Pasa yet, so flat armor pen, pretty good, but when you've got 1550, you buy a BF sword.
Exactly. When you can buy a BF sword, you pick it up. Don't know if it's necessarily going to be Infinity Edge. I believe the last time we saw Xiaohu build this solution, it was the Brutalizer into, I think, a Bloodthirster just for safe turret taking. Going to be involved in the turret game quite a lot. Waiting to see the Solar Flares used, but no, Sync Dream backs out. Yeah,
Sync Dream just going for a little bit of a power play there here in the bottom side of the map, just zoning Kabe away. There's a beautiful stun with the Solar Flare, though, straight into the Chompers, and Kabe, he's going to get ignited. The last auto attack from Tail, he's looking for it. The last tick, not going to be it. It is going to be enough as Sync Dream locks down the kill. Another double for the Gamti bottom lane, and they are playing out of their minds this game.
I mean, Sync Dream's Leona's really impressive, kind of tested his limits with the Zenith Blade, then re-engages with the Solar Flare. We were talking about that reality as your voice cracks.
I
understand
it. I'm excited about Sync Dream, man.
His most played champion. He's showing why.
He is certainly. As Xiaohu's showing why he plays this Lucian in the mid lane as well. He gets exhausted, flashes forward, picks it up with the Light Slinger, and now Pasa in a whole host of trouble. There's the knockback from the body slam. Xiaohu looks for it, doesn't get it. Actually cancels it out. The solo kill in the top lane as well as Sync Dream kills Karthus. Not sure how that happened, but he's going to survive the Requiem as well. And Gamti, they're rolling with this game.
And I just wish I knew how you were able to get a solo kill as Vladimir against the Gnar.
3-0 Gnar.
A 3-0 Gnar. He would have been sitting on so much gold he was, but still very, very curious.
And he builds a Ninja Tabi as well against Letme's Vladimir.
Well, I mean, look, he naturally has an advantage, so I can understand not necessarily building for lane, but after getting solo killed, I agree with you. A little bit strange.
Little bit strange indeed, but Gamti, they're pulling out all of the stops in this game. They realize it's match point. They know all of the pressure is on LD to win this one, and they're slamming it home very, very early. 5,000 gold is the lead here at 12.5 minutes as Letme's able to pressure this top turret a whole lot. Does have a Fiendish Codex. That Will of the Ancients going to be completed very soon. 2-1-0 as he's 16 CS in the lead. This Vlad top having a good game.
And we have to come back to that just because we're going to always expect Lucian to be able to outpush Karthus, have significant turret taking pressure on the AD versus caster mid lane matchup. Jinx winning this bot lane matchup means that she's always going to have pressure. They've both taken their turrets. You would think the one lane that LD could rely on would be Gnar in the top lane, be able to control the Vlad, push him in, take his turret. Him actually losing lane, the Vladimir winning lane, just means that that rotation to top, taking that turret should be pretty trivial if Vlad has lane pressure. And the win condition of Gamti of snowballing those objectives, they've started it well and they're going to keep going.
Yep, and LD, that little bait not going to be successful as Gamti, they just sit under their turret and play it safe. Nothing going here. 4-1-1 on this Jinx. More than happy just to sit back and let their win. And look at the Solar Flare. Doesn't quite get it, but there's the Zenith Blade. Southwind in trouble. The zap comes through, doesn't find a target.
Plenty of friends.
Yeah, but Southwind, man, you are so dead. And Kabe has to deal with both Huey and Xiaohu as oh my goodness, Super Mega Death Rocket just takes Southwind as he was right in front of the rest of the team members. And Tail, he's got some pretty good aim on that ultimate.
Yeah, rotational comp with double AD, and rotation's definitely in the advantage. Karthus always going to be largely relegated to farm mode in lane. Usually usually when he participates in a skirmish, it's just popping the Requiem. It's not actually being physically present. But level 10, the Requiem's still very, very low cooldown, completely out-rotated by Xiaohu on the Lucian, and they're just piling on the advantages.
Yeah, and a Voidless with the Glacial Prison available, not wanting to go aggressive here onto Huey, who's just having his way with his jungle, getting down the vision that he needs to. LD make their way back towards this bottom lane, but you can see the turret taking is beginning. Gamti now 2-0 on that front. 6,000 gold in the lead at 14 minutes is Letme. He's going to continue the trend. The top lane outer turret going to fall down, and if anyone's happy to sit on an island it is Vladimir.
I mean, Vladimir doesn't take Ghost Flash like he wants to, but still wants to be sprint pushing more often than not. Gamti explode the Dragon between the Lucian and the Jinx. That's 2-0 in Dragons, so that's basically every objective to speak about. 3 out of turrets, 2 Dragons. This is the picture-perfect way to play a double AD comp in the early to mid-game.
Yeah, and if there's a team that's practiced at playing double AD, whether it's Xiaohu on the Lucian or the Ezreal that he's shown so much prowess on, this is largely where Gamti get a lot of their leads. Nice wall up there on the top side as Letme does get gnarred into the wall. Doesn't get stunned for it, though, and look at his health regen. I love Potato. Oh my goodness, Avoidless, he comes around. There's the Hemoplague. He's held onto the pool for so long as Avoidless misses the Arctic Assault. Lovey Potato, is he going to fall? No, he's not. And the 2v1 does get successfully completed here.
Here comes the rocket.
Oh, super. Oh my goodness. Tail. So close.
He's been really on point
really good
with the downtown rockets. He's really been... I mean, that's not an easy thing to judge, is the back timing or where the minion wave will break and the greedy overstay for CS will occur. But getting closer and closer, and Graves has been forced into the emergency build here, Atlas.
Yeah, and the emergency Dark Passage there as well as the Culling almost takes down Southwind. Didn't quite need the heal, but the safety. I can understand why that came through because that Culling was tearing apart the poor little Thresh.
It's deceived. It's deceiving to see just how much extra damage Levels gives this Lucian in the mid game.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a big 80 item complete just yet, but a lot of cost-effective flat AD. And just being level 11 so much earlier almost led to Southwind giving away his life, misjudging the culling damage.
Yeah, and look at this as well. I believe he's probably going for the Infinity Edge into Ghostblade build as well, and that is a massive 2-item power spike that he's going to get relatively soon.
And Ghostblade's usually relegated to split push duty. We saw Whoosh on Vayne, 5 games, 5 Ghostblade pickups just to make yourself an extra dual lane carry.
Oh, Sync Dream. He's in a lot of trouble. The Eclipse not going to save him there as a Voidless picks up the kill.
Kava used the collateral damage and still didn't get the kill.
That's a little bit sad, but he does get an assist. So not all bad news as Xiaohu is just going to prop up his chair and head back to base. Let me continuing to farm in this top lane, has a CS advantage, now building up a Spectre's Cowl here as well, so going for that Spirit Visage, wanting as much staying power as he possibly can have. And the Boots of Lucidity there as well. I find it interesting that they didn't go for the Kindle Gem, just for extra cooldown reduction, which would be very close to that 40% there as well, but not going to, just going to make sure that he has as much magic resist as he possibly can. And of course, it's not even about the magic resist, it's getting hit by the enemy and being able to regen so much of your health back.
Yeah, had the CDR boots very early just to open up a bit of space to try and avoid the boomerang coming out through the Q, being coming out on a very low cooldown from Nas. I don't mind that purchase at all. Bloodthirster is the pickup from Xiaohu, and with those extra long swords, is definitely working his way towards the Ghostblade. I was trying to mention that Vayne goes for the early Ghostblade for dueling, but the reason why Xiaohu's picking it up is that if you ever leave a turret unattended, just popping the Ghostblade gives you so much extra attack speed, and then of course cooldown reduction helps with his spell rotations. You cannot leave this Lucian unattended or your turrets will fall immediately.
And he's definitely making sure that LD don't forget about him as well, as he just followed a Voidless who was trying to avoid him most completely. Didn't manage to there as Tail is going to continue the push here in this bottom side. Infinity Edge Zeal completed, and he's going to eat through these turrets. Southwind looking to get something going as he eats a zap there underneath the turret. Death Sentence not going to land. Tail able to move out of the way of that one, and the rotations from Gamti yet again heading towards this mid lane. There's a Glacial Prison, but he's going to take down the turret as Xiaohu. And Huey just happy to eat up that ultimate.
It's such a pleasure to watch a team that understand their win conditions and play around them so well. You got it right. Between Ezreal and Lucian, this is, I believe, the 6th game we've seen Gamti play double AD, and they've refined that strategy amazingly over the course of it. They're just pushing every lane. We know that LD have a massive teamfight advantage in 5v5, but the item timing's definitely on the advantage of Gamti, and they never have to opt into a 5v5 fight if they're always rotating with superior turret damage around the lanes.
Yeah, and they're getting there. They've got 280 carries as well, so they can split push. They can do this 3-2 in the top and bottom lanes, and the Gnar into the wall only lands on Let Me here, and Xiaohu free hitting in the backside. There's the explosive cast. Sync Dream going so deep here on the bottom side. Super Mega Death Rocket doesn't land on Akabe, who's completely out of mana. Sync Dream gets healed back up, doesn't die as Let Me Hemoplague down. Kabe trying to get out, not going to die to it. Tail gets death sentence, but a lot of these low members of LD not going to be able to do much as Tail now gets excited. Kabe, Tail wishing that was a crit, doesn't get it, but there's the kill. They get the triple in the bottom side. The bottom lane inner turret's going to fall. Huey makes his way back around, and Xiaohu, he's in the 1v1, but still getting damage on this turret.
And without the Rylai, Xiaohu doesn't need to respect the Karthus at all, has high lifesteal, can just relentless pursuit away, hit up the minion wave, tank a few turret hits, go and take the turret. Gumty, this is great, great strategic play from them. Yeah,
really beautiful. Passer actually eats a culling here as well. The inhibitor going to fall down. 20 minutes and 20 seconds. Gumty take an inhibitor this game, and I didn't see where LD could have got back through. And after Lovey Potato teleported down, got a massively great trade, was unable to do anything, and then Gumty, they just won every single lane almost at the same time.
How do you win a lane against a 3-0 opponent on Vladimir, who just isn't the ideal pickup against Na, but it just feels like maybe there was an overextension.
Yeah.
Maybe Lovey Potato went for a turret dive that went awry, but the extra item time is an experience that Let Me was managed to build up. Not even that is a potential thing to translate for the Na.
3,500 gold is the lead for Tail in that bottom lane. That is close to a Bloodthirster, like complete.
It started at level 2 with the excellent all-in engage coming through and the Graves falling behind. Even though you have pick opportunities in this lane, even though you have a lot of burst, if you're able to keep that distance as the Jinx, you're always going to win trades with the extra 200 range on your rocket autos. The laning phase gets better and better for the Jinx. Leona in the front line. Sync Dream on his most practice champion this split, I believe, showing just how good as Leona is. We've seen so many times, just threatening with the Zenith Blade, going in, backing away, instant solar flare, and picking up the kills.
Yeah, really beautiful stuff. He's finished the Haunting Guise as well, wants to get some of that magic penetration, has his Spirit Visage completed, and they're just pushing this one out as Xiaohu and Tail make such quick work of this dragon. Xiaohu more than able to tank that one up with all of the lifesteal from that Bloodthirster. And Tail, he's now got a QSS. There's no locking down this Jinx.
And while this will not be a perfect game, of course, 6 kills already on the board from LD. When we're talking about objectives, it's looking like the perfect game. 3 dragons and 7 turrets to 0.
Yep, really, really great stuff. 12,000 gold lead here at 22 minutes into the game. I have not seen many teams come back from that sort of deficit as Gamty really trying to solidly hold on to their place in the LPL. As Xiao, who goes so aggressive under Southwind. My gosh, that's 1v3 as he flashes out of the way. There's the Glacial Prism, but doesn't do too much as the Explosive Cast sort of stops what they want to do. Passer going to flash defensively here away from the Gamti lineup after they pick up the Baron. And I didn't think there was enough time to do Baron in that stage, but I see the purple spinning around the members of Gamti, and man, this double AD tears apart anything.
It's double AD and a consistent damage threat in Vladimir. Sync Dream's caught Passer.
Yeah, there's the culling. Doesn't quite land. Ardent Blaze is going to at least reveal Super Mega Death Rocket, and Tail picks up the kill.
If you play enough Jinx, apparently you have precise knowledge of the travel time of the Super Mega Death Rocket. But we've said that multiple times this series. Always stun people from distance. Kabe.
Oh my god.
That first crit did half his health.
That was disgusting. And that will happen every time. Of course, Static Shiv giving you that one. And jeepers. That's only a 2-item Jinx as well. Man. Very difficult. Descends onto Xiaohu here. He gets flayed back into the team. Exhausted as well as Kabe picks up that kill. Lovey Potato taking a lot of damage from Tail. Is about to evolve into that Mega Gnar. Tail has a whole lot of AoE damage, and they get the pick up onto Xiao, who was overly aggressive, but they're probably going to lose an inhibitor.
Exactly. 1 kill for losing one of your major objectives, your inhibitor turret. There's the Big Gnar.
Big Gnar into Lovey Potato as well, but he takes the Lantern out of here as a Voidless tries to look for something. Look at the AoE damage. Let Me doing so much work. Passer tries to get in position, but Jinx gets excited. Tail takes just sort of an afterthought inhibitor, but the triple kill from Let Me. Monstrous damage there in the back line, and that Hemo Plague must have erupted for so much. They're going to win this game. Let Me sitting on so much gold. Super Mega Death Rocket flies forward, and LD unfortunately not going to progress, but Gamty really deserving of this victory.
And just a pleasure of a series to cast Atlas. LD in their one victory, understanding their win conditions and executing on them. In the last 2 games, and particularly in this game, I have not seen such a cleanly played double AD comp in the whole of this LPL. But we're talking 280 games or so that we've cast so far in the LPL. Lucian, Jinx, not the traditional double AD, but you can see why they open up Lucian. Excellent turret taking ability, much more lane control around level 6 and onwards for the Lucian. So more options than an Ezreal in that situation. So the move to Lucian seems to be suiting Gamty. 2-0 with that mid Lucian. I mean, 7 turrets to 0, 3 dragons to 0, and a Baron. Every single objective goes straight to Gamty.
Yep, really beautiful stuff. But ladies and gentlemen, Gamty have now progressed to the semi-final against Starhorn Royal Club. We are going to have another match coming up. It is, of course, the playoffs for the LPL, a massive one. LGD taking on OMG, but it is going to be at 7 p.m. We've got about an hour to wait until that one comes up. But guys, go and get yourself something to eat, get a drink, and then come back to watch that one. It is going to be a gigantic series, and we'll see you then.
I swear to God, I will hold